Did any of that have to do with the contract that we have with our broker on those? Or was it just lack of scrap coming in?
The lack of scrap coming in, and you noticed earlier in the year, came to council and complained about a lot of our storm drains, meters getting stolen. So all of that was part of the economic slump that we were seeing. People finding a way to survive out there.
Okay.
And a lot of it was just basic staff too.
We're on, yeah, and that, I mean, we're on pace compared to 2 years ago for a 40% decrease. All right.
I think our tonnage overall is down at the recycling center. Council, do you have a preference for which order you would like to go in? No workshop.
She's ready.
I would suggest maybe we would start with maybe HDI and maybe site united.
When we get out there.
That's what we were hoping for. Yes.
That, how about we start with, y'all don't care, maybe site united, everybody's doing it?
Fine.
Jacking in and out.
I assume everybody has a copy of the budget that we had requested.
Yeah.
The request is for $33,750, which is exactly the same amount we requested the court. Last year it was $30,000. This just brings us back to parity with the county. And you see, I think, excuse me, what the monies are used for. We have the management contract with the chamber, but it's been going on since 1990. So the chamber provides all of the economic development services to the community. I think the only other comment I would make is that this last fiscal year, July of 13 through this month, we have generated a little bit over $168,000 of land sales to the city. So we think that's a pretty good return on investment. Certainly doesn't include the clients which you have seen in terms of the KBI investments or the expansions which you've seen in the newspaper. Example, International Crankshafts, $46.5 million. So that money doesn't include occupational tax, construction tax from occupation, net profits tax, ad valorem tax, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my point of it is very simple, and that is to ask for Scott County and I to receive the same amount the county's receiving. So I think the ROI is a pretty good deal. That's about all I need to say. I don't have to answer any questions.
Jack, we didn't have a copy
We
of.
can't take any action tonight.
did not? Well,
There's no voting whatsoever going to take place. This is a workshop.
They did not get a,
Copy of the management contract.
oh, no, nobody asked for it.
Oh, can you get us a copy
Sure
of that?
can, absolutely. Yes, sir. In fact, we just amended it last year, but the answer is yes. And let me just say, since you've asked that question, when we did this in 1990 in terms of the management contract, it was probably the very first, it was a precedent as far as I'm concerned in the state of Kentucky, where you actually combine both a chamber and an economic development entity. The best example is what Commerce Lexington has done, where they've combined Lexington United with the chamber, Greater Lexington Chamber. So we're kind of pleased to be able to do that, so you're receiving full benefit for a minimal amount of money. So I think it was a pretty good deal back then, and it seems to have worked very, very well. I'll be more than happy to get. Just looking for parity.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Very much appreciate it.
David, what do you want to make?
Yeah.
ACR?
I'd already hit you all up last Monday, but I still wanted to be here tonight in the event that there are any questions in the interim, or if you wanted to have any further discussion about specific elements of the budget. You know, as we are asking for more than we received last year, part of that's because we are shifting gears as an organization. We are working to monetize ourselves better, but as the old saying goes, you have to have money to make money. in order for us to be able to move forward with things like launching a new event, which we're hoping to do this year with the Autumn Beer Barbecue, we would have to have additional money in order to start up that event, which would then become a revenue source, which would allow us to ask for less money in the future. But we're also trying to become much more involved across the board in any of the activities that occur here in Georgetown, or even some of the ones that are a little bit more Scott County-ish. And that will require additional expenditure on our part, but we're trying to be a better partner, to be more involved with a lot of different organizations, and to raise our profile as an organization. Are there any additional questions, comments, concerns?
Where's most of the increase coming from on the 12,250? I know it isn't your.
From our downtown promotion and events. We had not previously listed any monies. If you'll notice the items which are asterisks, those are ones that are either new or represent a change in the budget. So you notice that's participation in different events that are taking place in downtown that we were not a part of previously. Some of those expenses can just be things like printing of promotional materials, either for us or the event, as well as having the capability to actually set up a booth, have somebody out there, be able to talk about our downtown. We're also looking to try to promote the Royal Spring Park more. Part of what we're doing with that, too, is just selecting that as our venue for the Taste of Georgetown this year. But we're looking to focus more on that specific area because we feel that it's an underutilized aspect of our downtown. A lot of downtowns don't have a green space, but we do, and it's historically significant. Not just as the birthplace of bourbon, but also the Dry Stack Stone Bridge. It's been there since 1795. And there are some wonderful elements to promote about that other towns can't capitalize on. So we're looking to make that a major focus as part of our program for the coming year, as well as to have some additional monies for business promotion and recruitment, and that will be part of our economic restructuring committee. And that's something that has not been a strong point for our organization previously. We're looking to plus that up, attract some more members to the committee, and focus more on doing for downtown what the chamber does on a far larger scale throughout Scott County. There's some other elements in there as far as social media development and expansion, partnership networking. Some of that's just the basic ability to be able to do a business lunch, which our current budget does not allow for at all. And our committee work plan expenses, our committees come up with some great ideas sometimes, but they don't always necessarily fit into the budget proper. So a lot of times that was coming out of what would technically be our contingency funds in case something goes south. And so we wanted to actually have some additional funds in there for that. An example for that, which I mentioned to the council at the last meeting, is the TV that we're putting out at the rest area. That was something that wasn't actually line itemed in the budget, but it was something that was come up with in one of our committee work plans.
That contingency fund, or I assume reserve fund, how much do you guys have in that right now?
For the budget for this year, we brought that down to $1,000 actually. We had more listed, and it was listed as miscellaneous, which seemed like a rather pointless category to me. So we shifted some into the work plan funds, and then kept $1,000 there as a contingency, just in case there's something that comes up that wouldn't be covered by anything else, but absolutely has to be covered.
So are you carrying a reserve?
It'd be difficult to assess that at this point, sir. We're in the middle point of our budgets, and I haven't been all the way through a budget cycle yet, and we have the Taste of Georgetown coming up, which is a significant undertaking for us.
Can you get back with us on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you comment briefly on, you have downtown advertising listed as a new item in there
Yes.
at 5,000. Can you comment on scope of that or intention there?
Some of that would be related more towards like our new event that we're planning, but that goes back to what I shared with council earlier, that we don't have the ability, at least for this coming fiscal year, to receive any advertising grants from tourism, and that was a channel that we had been able to use previously for promotion of things like Taste of Georgetown or for Christmas. We wanted to still be able to have that capability, and it's something that would be better for us to have the ability to do in-house going forward. If situations change over their tourism, and I know they've always been supportive of us and want to be, but their budget may not always allow for that.
Mayor, I saw Lori in here earlier, and I guess she had to run. Can you make contact with them and ask them about the budget shortfall that he's spoken about a couple of times in terms of the grants? Thank you.
Just real quick, David, I just wanted to ask you about the
Mhm.
cell phone where you have $1,100. Do you have an asterisk internet phone?
Right, because it's new. We haven't had a cell phone previously.
Okay.
My understanding is that the previous director used her personal cell for anything Main Street related. That was not a practice we wished to continue moving forward. And in part because I like being able to not answer my personal phone when it's a number I don't recognize, and it could be a telemarketer. The white cell phone, which is the Main Street phone, I answer every time. And unfortunately, it is telemarketers. But it's a definite asset to us. You know, when I'm out on the street, things still happen, and this lets people get in touch with us. And I know that I've had representatives from the city. Arlene's called me on it a number of times as we're planning rededication of City Hall. Some of those times I've been out, on Main Street, talking to our retailers or what have you, and it's a definite necessity considering the nature of the office. I can't be pinned to the desk all day.
I know $1,100 is a little high for a cell phone.
Well, we don't have a business account where we're, having multiple cell phones, so you're having to go in and just get a single cell phone. And I tried talking with Verizon to keep the cost down, but
Could you not partner with the city on the cell phone and come in under the plan of the city?
that wasn't a suggestion I'd previously received.
You talking about using his phone, but some compensation?
Well, no, even the other phone, taking it as a city phone, and so that he can get the bigger plan, the cheaper plan, and do it that way.
I'm not
What's
sure
the
that we've
suggested-
actually renegotiated those plans yet, have we? I know Betty was talking about it at one point, but
Might be
But yeah,
something to
that's
look into.
the actual
Yeah.
cost if you go out and just buy a basic cell phone plan these days, as long as it has a data plan, which we need in order to do things like post to
might
Facebook
cover
or
it.
Instagram,
It
then
might cover it.
you're looking at almost $100 a month. So,
Point well taken.
What about, I was thinking Karen was talking about utilizing your phone, and that may be totally something you're opposed to, but, is that something that you'd be open to? Is that something that we could do in terms of splitting the cost?
I'm sorry, could you clarify there? You lost me at the beginning.
You use your phone and you get some type of reimbursement or compensation for it? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if that's a possibility, if it's something we've done with any other employees within the city or not.
I think it's a preference that he really doesn't want to do. When he has downtime, he doesn't want city people calling him.
I also think that's probably a question for his board
Yeah.
as well.
That was something that had actually been determined before I came in as the director, was that they wanted to have an organizational cell phone. That also is good for continuity in the event that I get hit by a bus crossing Main Street. They don't have to go out and change the phone number again. We did the big rebranding. We changed our name. People still call us HDI, but we are Georgetown Main Street now. We're having a new website. We're making a significant shift there. We don't want another thing that has
That's
to
fine.
change.
That's just throwing it out.
Yeah.
Well, when the city bids out cell phones, they should maybe include yours into that and see if that helps get a cheaper rate.
I believe we'd certainly be open to that. Anything that can keep our administrative costs down. That's one of our goals. We're trying to run as lean as possible on the administrative side because that's not who we are. It's what we need in order to survive. Who we are is everything in downtown, and that's where we're trying to spend the bulk of our money now to be more integrated in the downtown, to partner with other organizations and events that already exist to bring more attention to downtown Georgetown and to us. And part of that, of course, is a revenue concern. If we can increase our number of business members and individual members, then we don't have to ask the city for as much money, which would probably make both of our organizations happier. But we're at a point right now as an organization where we're shifting gears. We're taking a different tack compared to what we were previously. And so additional funding at this point would really help us to be able to take that strong step forward to where we don't have to ask for as much money the next time.
Any other questions today? if you have any preference.
I don't think there's anyone here from planning and zoning, is there?
Had a little spring break plan.
Yeah, Mr. Kane already has placed, yeah,
Y'all wanna go ahead and do electrical inspection? Y'all go ahead and do electrical?
That's fine.
Let's do, come on.
I'll up the board, Don.
What do you need to know? He works for me.
He works for both of us, Judge. Well, remember that.
Let's not go down that road.
Well,
It's like Thanksgiving dinner. It's like bad Thanksgiving dinner, yeah.
Hey, welcome back, Don.
Hey, Don.
I like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't.
No?
We'd love to have you, but I don't think you'd want. I don't think you'd want to.
Welcome, Mr. Hall.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Where do y'all want to start? I didn't bring any much information with me. I thought maybe the judge probably has most of the answers for anything, but I'll try to answer any questions that you like.
you have your,
Budget?
budget, just on, right here, then.
I've got a copy of my budget.
Well, Don, I guess, is there anything new in your budget?
Basically, the
I'll
only
get
thing that
started.
I added in my budget this year that wasn't last year is for some computer software that we've been talking about for years. And I think we added $6,000 in there, really not knowing exactly what that number was going to be. And outside of that, really my budget hasn't changed any. We're not asking for any new capital.
Where'd the 10,000 come from beyond the 6?
10,000 on what?
Well, you got $16,000 increase in your budget in the 6.
Well,
is
six of that,
software.
obvious, is the computer software, and the rest of it, I think, is the benefits, where your retirement, the unemployment, working comp, and all that went up, and I got that number from, I think, the judge, so I think that's what that is. The remaining, that 16 is the benefit package that went up.
Your software, have you all already taken a look as far as what kind of software you're going to get?
Well, Jim is basically, Burgess is taking care of that. He has made contact with a outside, Don can probably brief you on that more than I can, but he has talked to,
Web QA?
huh?
The Web QA?
It's a software that you want to.
She told me.
All right, there you go.
I was gonna say, is that through our entire package that we're discussing with Sophisticity as well, or soft?
I believe that
IT?
will go with that, but there's also the portion of the cost for the building inspection, electrical inspection software. So increased cost for both.
That's-
I guess the judge will have those.
I'm just wanting, Don, do you know if this, I mean, is that the intent with the software? Is that something above and beyond what we're trying to do countywide with our
I
IT
think-
solutions?
And I might be speaking out of turn, I think maybe we're trying to get building and electrical, not separate, but trying to get them up and running maybe first or ahead of everybody else. We've got a system that is like 20-some years old, PT Win. We can't even get no support on it no longer.
Right.
It's a dinosaur that we've been working with, piecing it together for years. Our computer goes down a couple of times a week. And of course, the lady here is able to get it back up for us pretty quick. But it's just something that it's been needing to replace for years. And, you know, it's, I guess, hopefully it's now that, you know, we're able to get this taken care of this year and get some new software and get the program back where it needs to be.
That's where you actually make the,
Excuse me?
that's where you actually generate the records. I mean,
Yeah,
generate.
all of our billing and like I said, all of our permit process, it goes through the computer, and we're tied back in with building inspection. They put the information in, we get it from them, then we put it on our permit. So it really starts from building inspection office. Most of our work, some of our work does, as far as the computer work.
And they are included on 3 users.
Okay.
2,600 for a half of that.
Don, your rent was estimated at $18,000 for this coming year. What did we budget for that last year?
For building rent, I think that was the same amount. It hasn't gone up.
For the building rent? Okay.
Yes, and that includes all utilities.
Okay.
Something on the positive side, I was doing, I checked today, this time last year at the end of March, and this year, well, 2012, 2013, and 14, 15, there's over $50,000 difference in income. We're $50,000 ahead in this month than we were this in March of last year's. It's really picked up. We're issuing a lot of permits. We've got a lot of inspections to do, and housing has gone up. We got a lot of commercial work going on right now because I think of the Lexus, but our revenues are. I'm already ahead of what I budget for the whole year. Our revenues are, and you know I've still got 3 more months to go.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Building inspection.
Bill inspection, you know, parallels with us. Whatever we're doing, and pretty much they're doing the same thing.
Great.
So have you adjusted the revenue in your budget accordingly to what you gave us on that?
Have I adjusted it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Judd?
Yeah, what we budget has nothing to do with how much money you get. You're gonna get half of what we get.
Well, I realize that, but it would be nice to know if it's reflected in this budget, because we've got a payment to government agencies of $60,000 in this budget. If it's significantly more than that,
You'll get it.
I'm not asking if we'll get it. I'm asking if you've
Yeah,
budgeted.
I get a monthly report from Stacy, and it shows the percentage of the money that has been paid, the revenue has crossed the street, and I get a monthly report on that, and my percent of I think the percent of revenue that has come in and what she has forwarded over here is about 100% right now of what we originally budget. Yeah, I get a monthly report on that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. We don't, so that's why I was asking. I mean, because according to your budget, it looks like a subsidy of $214,000. If that subsidy is not $214,000 and it's $100,000, that's a huge thing. That's why I was asking if the increase in the revenues is reflected in that $60,000 number that we have in that budget.
It is a $20,000 increase over what was in last year's budget.
Already? And what was the revenues for last year's budget?
Well, the 13-14 budget included $50,000 budget, and they have increases to, $50,000 per our half, and then increases to $60,000 the total.
Okay.
So they are showing an increase in revenue compared to last year's budget.
Okay.
Don, a question on last year's budget. I think what you requested last year, if I can read my sheet correctly, was $135,000. What the council actually approved was $121,000. How did you handle the difference of it being? The last year's budget, what electrical inspection asked for was $135,000, but what the council approved on our part was $121,000. How did that office handle not having having what they requested?
They just went out and budget with what they had estimated. The city paid everything that we billed them for, so.
Okay, did you bill the city for $135,000 or $121,000?
No, just actual expenses.
Which, do you remember Stacy, do you have what that is?
I'm talking about the current amount. I will say that we have been paying the actual bills until we hit that point after the
We have not hit that point yet.
We have not hit that point yet.
Okay.
I know the last time I looked at animal shelter specifically because I knew it had the largest cut. We still had like a month to a month and a half left, and then at that point I'll come back to it.
Okay. Okay.
I'll try to.
Karen, some of that reflected the fact that One of my secretary, she left us, which she had 15 years of service, and we hired a new lady, which was probably about 40-50% less in salary than hers was. Then I had two other employees. They had some extensive medical issues this year. One guy was out for like a month, 6 weeks, so we didn't have his salary for 6 weeks. And then the other, the female, she was out because of her dad, she was out for quite a while. So probably most of that was made up in the, where we didn't use the salary.
Okay, great.
But we've not had any hiccup in service, though. We're still getting the inspections done on a timely.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I was telling
And 50,000
Karen
ahead in revenue.
some news for me, as far as revenues is really gonna pick up this year, is that we've been contacted by the state, a week ago, and they have turned the Toyota project over to us. And we're now doing the inspections on the plant expansion at Toyota. So that's gonna generate quite a bit of revenue for us.
Oh, wow.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Donna.
Who's the next person?
Well, you just will go to building, hadn't you, since you just did this one?
Building inspection. Oh, Mr. Donald is representing tonight.
You got it.
Welcome, Mr. Mullen.
You plant that.
I'm just filling in for Jim. Be happy to answer any questions you got. I think really the only increase we have is with the new software stuff. He does have a vehicle in there, and we've had two in the past, and he realizes things are gonna get tight from next couple years. So if there was money that we could go on and replace it, that would get us probably for the next 10, 12 years, as far as our vehicle, because we have two new ones, but,
I'll make one quick comment, just for that discussion with Jim, they did budget for the maintenance on their new software in the sophisticated services, under professional services. So that's why that line item is in there.
So that's covered by the Sophisticity contract?
Yes, so building inspections portion of sophisticated contract is $6,900 a year, of course, we see that full cost.
And Don Hawkins's, the electrical inspection, that $6,000 is also covered by the Sophisticity contract, or is that?
They have 5,200 for their
52.
They have 3 years for building inspection, that's for it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that when Jim and I discussed it, that's why you see it under professional services instead of computer hardware and software, is because it's the maintenance on the new software, and it is Sophisticity, which is it.
But just to be clear, the update from PT Win to Web QA, that's covered under the contract? Under the Sophisticity?
It's under the special, it's under the Sophisticity contract.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, yeah.
That's a separate software.
Well, we've already
Yes.
approved that, so, yeah, there's no reason to dicker over that. All right. So how bad off is the truck? I guess I'll ask. I'll be the one to ask.
do what?
How bad off is the truck that you're at, the new truck you're asking to replace?
Our trucks are, I'm not gonna tell you it won't last.
Oh, you really should.
I probably should, yeah, I think that's the way it works, isn't it?
I'm always the one that I have to ask. Well,
No, honestly, I mean, Jim realizes probably for the next 8, 9 years, there's not gonna be vehicles available for us. And we have 2 new ones. The other ones are pushing 100,000. And like, you can look at our cost for our maintenance. Last year was $1,100, and that's because we got 2 new vehicles. We're not putting $300 in them here, $400 here.
This was a 02 that has 118,000 miles.
So he's just looking long-term. If there's money now, that'll set us for a few years.
Is that four-wheel drive?
Yes,
Do a lot
all
of
of our vehicles are four-wheel drive.
do a lot of driving off-road?
Do what?
Do y'all do a lot of driving off-road on the sites?
Not a lot, but you just never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know what the next job site's gonna be.
Probably get a 1500, like a Chevy Silverado 1500.
The last one we bought was an Explorer and an Escape.
Escape. Oh, okay. Well, that's not bad. Hmm. I don't know if anybody else has a question, but
Any other questions?
I think Mark's got one.
yeah, I was just so be a 4-wheel drive on the Escape. Is that a? I guess it'll be the stripped down package like a 4-cylinder.
Yes, it is a 4-cylinder.
Okay. All right.
I think it was 20. Yeah, it's not really much cheaper than the Explorer, but gas mileage wise, it was a little bit better.
Well, the estimated lifespan of 12 years, so that's a little over $2,000 a year having the vehicle. So.
Your telephone's on here because there's a comment, I'm looking at the right thing. It says your telephones are proposed at $12,000, and they have gone up substantially over the last 5 years, because they were like 5,000, 4,000, 6,000, 10,000. Made a huge jump in 2012 to 12,000. And then the little comment says, this continues to get out of control, but they are tied into City Hall system. Why is the telephone, is this the cell phones as well?
That includes the cell phones, and we're not really sure why it's that high.
That's a
There-
problem.
there are-
That's not, it doesn't even.
There's been some inquiries as to why. We think for a while there, we were like, when code enforcement switched,
Uh-huh.
we were maintaining phones for code enforcement.
But even that doesn't make complete sense, because let's just go back to, 2009, 2010, or 10, 11, it was 4,000 then. 2011 to 12 was 6,000, and now it's $12,000. That's double in 2 years. It's impossible.
They are trying to figure it out. I mean, Jim's asked why it's so high, but see, we personally don't pay that bill.
Uh-huh.
That's paid by, I believe, Jennifer's office.
Well, then that needs,
Holly.
okay, well, then that needs to be figured out to why that's, yeah, and that should have been a red flag even before we're having this conversation now, but we should have red flagged that even last year or the year before last, but that's, something is definitely not right there.
No,
That's
it's
substantial.
How many people do we have working in the office?
4.
So you got $12,000 for 4 users. That's $3,000 a year per user on phones.
So HDI's getting a deal then.
That's that's $250 a month per user. Per month.
It's high. We're not sure why it's that high.
That's really high. It's like,
Well, it is not just the telephones, but I would definitely look into it. It does include the landline, but
How much is covered? I should have lasers for $250 a month for a cell phone.
Any of them have, do any of you guys have iPads or anything like that, or?
We do have iPhones,
iPhones,
but,
with the data packet?
yes, but that shouldn't have made that sort of increase as well. But we have 4 or 5 lines, so it'll roll over. But it's something Jim's been questioning for a while, to try to figure out what that problem is. Because it is a big line item
Yeah, it's,
for a 4-person department.
there's definitely something there needs to be changed and checked out.
yeah, over in electrical inspection, what do you all have, a 4-person office? Is it 4?
We only got 3 phones.
But how many people? I mean, just
We got 4 people, but
yeah.
3 cell phones.
But you
So
got
it's
land.
2,700 over in electrical inspection, and if it's just the 3 users, that's 900 a year per user. And that's what, I can't do the math that quickly. $75 per month per user, whereas we're paying $250 per month per user over in building inspection. That's
And we seriously don't know the answer to that right now?
I don't know off the top of my head.
So Jim's looking into it.
He's been looking into it. I don't know if he's discussed it with Stacy, but he's made some inquiries as to why it's so high.
Jen may have an answer to that, Mayor.
Okay.
I don't have visibility over the billing portion of it, but I do the on the online management tool, and their phones are only $64 a month. Before I came, the Verizon was reworked, and that's full data and full phone. But I don't know what happens, I don't, from a budget standpoint, but they're not paying $200. It's $64 a month per user.
We have 5 users.
For their cell phones, right. Or 4 users? Yeah, 4 users.
4 users for 64. That's
So-
cheap.
Yeah, so they're not using that inflated rate.
It's only about
Thank
$3,000 a
you,
year.
Jen.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a cell phone, I think it's probably landlines, I didn't look at that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's why he put that note in there tied to City Hall. He thinks
Yeah.
we're somewhere in there, we're paying for,
You might be paying for everybody's.
we might be.
And everybody has to
All
charge.
comes out the same pot anyway, right?
No. Can't do that. Now, there's one question I have on the motor fuel.
Uh-huh.
Y'all are projecting only $4,200 spending on motor fuel.
Mhm.
Y'all have been up around 12,000 in past years. It says on the end of the sheet this continues to drop as well with the newest, but I don't know what the last of that says.
Well, we surplused a Dodge four-wheel drive, got about 12 miles to the gallon. I think the Escape gets about 24.
Oh, okay.
So,
New truck, you might get some a little better mileage, right?
yeah, I mean, we had some gas guzzles, if you will.
Big difference.
Anything else?
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Donald. Any other questions, Connie?
No, I want to do dispatch.
How's everybody tonight? My biggest jumps that you will see were planned jumps in the budget. If you'll look back at the detailed breakdown at dispatch, in line item 245, communications equipment maintenance, we have a $7,000 increase in our Esri software that we have to utilize for mapping. It's pretty much a mandatory upgrade that we're going to have to do this year in order to keep up with the industry as a whole and to stay with our software that we use for dispatching, doing our mapping. The communications equipment maintenance, $109,000. You'll see an attachment. That was the contract that was signed a number of years ago and approved by you all. This was our yearly increase of roughly $3,000. And training and professional services, we picked up sending Ricky Lust from the police department to our New World Conference this year. Because Ricky does a great majority, or almost all of the New World systems and the mobile data terminal work for the county, sheriff's department, fire departments, and all of that, we're going to pull him into my budget for the training so that it is split by the county as well, rather than just the city picking it up as a whole, because Ricky is doing such a large amount of work for the county MDTs. And I have also picked up, we merged our cleaning supplies into expendables, so that's why we show a difference there, and our office supplies went up just as a general increase. The big thing I'm looking at this year is a capital replacement of our 44-channel recorder that we use to record all of our phone calls and radio system. We're 7 to 8 years into the recorder that we have now, which is about 2 to 3 years past mission critical lifespan of a system. The one that we have presently was replaced when it got struck by lightning shortly after I took over in 2006. So insurance paid for that one. Luckily, we got out of that. So they couldn't replace it with one of the same model, so we got the newest model back then. We have hit end-of-life support on it. It is not supported by the maker for Windows 7, and all of our computers have been upgraded now to Windows 7 in the dispatch center. We have a workaround that gets us past it temporarily, but they don't support it. I have to do all of the maintenance outside of their support because they don't support the present device on Windows 7 machines, so.
Is that not anything to do with cover either?
No, ma'am, it's totally independent. It's a 44-channel, software-driven recorder that gets everything that goes on in the dispatch center, and we rely on it heavily. We get anywhere between 5 and 10 requests a week for recordings involving murders, just routine phone calls, everything we get in there, and we rely on it heavily.
So the 35,000, does that include years 2 through 5, or is it 35,000 plus one of those prepaid maintenance options?
We do not have to take, I presently don't utilize a prepaid maintenance agreement. We pay yearly on the maintenance agreement. It's a little bit more, but that's what, because of the way we got into the contract on the one that we purchased years ago, that's the way we do it. It's a personal preference on whether or not we want to pay ahead. I would prefer not to pay ahead on that, just because if we have a problem with the service, then we can withhold the payment the next year until we get what we need.
Okay.
So the first year, I think it's the maintenance is included in the payment, the budgetary payment, so we wouldn't have to pay for it. The second year, we would have to pick up that amount in our agreement, which would be
16,966.
yes, but that's over that 5-year period.
Okay.
So it would be roughly what we have budgeted now in ours, which is roughly $5,500.
Okay.
So we already budget that every year for that. So.
Okay.
Chip, can you go a little bit more in detail about Mr. Lusk and what exactly he's doing? with that?
Ricky is a detective at the police department. His major assignment right now is an IT person. He does all the IT work for the police department. He does pretty much 100% of the maintenance on all the mobile data terminals that are utilized in Scott County. And there are probably at least 100 of them out there. So he does all of the maintenance on those. He specializes in those, as well as he's a backup for me with any of the New World System work.
So the mobile data terminal, that's what would be in a police car, a sheriff's car, an ambulance?
Correct.
Okay. Are we allocating any of his salary into the sheriff's department or to the ambulance department, EMS department, or anything like that, or?
Brad, if I could just interrupt, we do not have the MDTs in our ambulance.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they no longer have them in theirs. But
Okay.
that I'm aware of, no. He does a great majority of his work in the police department doing their IT stuff with the computer and stuff. What he does for the MDTs, we were looking at our guess as picking up the expense for this to be that, or the split on it would be that. So I don't know how to explain it. If he works on an MDT, a sheriff deputy will bring one in, he'll work on it. It's one of those things where you can do multiple things at a time. If you have to re-image a hard drive, you can re-image the hard drive while you're doing multiple other things at the same time and then come back to it. So it's...
I've done that a lot.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a dedicated type thing that he does, so...
So is there no way for us then to monitor that time? Because I know we've gone through the same thing with Jen in a lot of these interlocal departments, and the time that she's spent at Parks and Rec or building inspection or something like that, and we're trying to figure out a way in order to chronicle that time in order to allocate the funds accordingly.
It would be possible to keep track of all that time that he puts in both places. That would be something that we would have to talk to Chief Bossy about. He's one of Chief Bossy's employees.
Sure.
But I'm sure it would be very simple to do. It would just be a matter of him keeping track of it.
Okay.
Did you say the maintenance on your recording system has already been in previous budgets?
Yes, sir. It is broke down. I can tell you where exactly it is. It will be in communications equipment maintenance, 01-13-245. And that is Applied Digital Solutions, the recorder service contract. And I apologize, it's 6,500, not 5,500.
6,500 a year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so will we be paying that with the new system when we purchase the new system?
If we go ahead with the new system, we could remove that $6,500 for that first year.
For the first year?
It would be included, yes.
I got you. Is it, in your opinion, in danger of breaking down at any particular time during the year, right now, in imminent danger?
I don't think we're gonna make another 12 months with it. We've already lost a hard drive in it, and we had to have Applied Digital Solutions come over with no notice and re-image the hard drive, and we lost the recordings during that time span.
So we've actually lost recordings?
8 hours, yes. We lost 8 hours while he was re-imaging that drive.
All right. Say no more.
Anything else I can help you with?
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Jen.
You got it?
John, do recycling, environmental services, are they here? Yea or nay? Cemetery here? Carrie?
Council Mayor, we're gonna cover two areas tonight. We're gonna do recycling first, and then we'll touch bases on cemetery. So let's start off with recycling. What I'd like to point out in recycling first is that the overall budget, this is the operating expenses and the employee benefits. That totals the $256,410 that we're asking for this particular year here. Last year, we was at $225,430. So you're looking at an increase of $18,000 that we are asking for. Now, the bulk of that is coming from, look at salaries and benefits. We got $7,500 increase there. And part of that is probably due to the planned wage increase. And the other big portion of that is going to be coming from motor fuel. I'm increasing that by $4,000 there. And professional services, I'm increasing that by $12,000. Those are the only areas that's really being changed in the recycling area.
Terry, that increase in the salaries is like a 7.5% increase.
Let me speak to that, 'cause I did that.
8.5.
What it is, like I said, this is, for these we've started. Obviously, I have not backed off in the past. You all have done, vacancy rates. So these rates are seeing if we can incorporate a raise, and right now it's 100% with no vacancy rate. Obviously, like I said, there are a lot of things to go through these, and obviously compile them in both budgets.
So does that mean you're trying to accommodate for the vacancy rate?
I'm starting out there, and just to see where it comes out, because I want to look at all of our salary budgets and see how the vacancy rate has played out in our various departments. I always start at 100% when I begin my budget process. So like I said, we've obviously not gone through this yet to present the mayor's proposed budget.
But that would mean that
Keep that in mind.
that's 100% plus 7.5%.
I will have to go back and look at the individual numbers on that, but I do know.
We amended it to $90,089, and the request is for $97,608. That would be like 7.8%. So are we allotting for the 4% vacancy rate plus a 3% raise?
At this time, like I said, we have not presented the mayor's proposed budget yet. We have not had a chance to go through this. I haven't had a chance to see what's going to factor in. I put these in there for, obviously, as I prepare these to present to the judge, and this is our absolute maximum possibility on salaries. We will go through these with the mayor's proposed budget.
All right, so are we gonna find more allocations for the vacancy rate built into the salaries in other departments?
see if we can project a 3% increase.
Plus a vacancy rate.
No.
Not
Well,
yet.
you're gonna see that increase over the last year, yes. So the 90,089 included a 3% vacancy rate. I put that back in as well as
Okay.
a potential.
That's what I was asking. Terry, the professional services budget, an additional $12,000 or approximately 40%.
Well, normally in the past couple of years, Brad, I really have been lowballing that. And the reason I was doing that because I had several employees in the Public Works Department that was on light duty or modified work that I was able to shift over and help those guys in that area. Now, my workforce is getting more healthier, and we're able to go out there and stay in the Public Works and Sanitation Department and do our own work over there. So I'm going to have to go ahead and bump this back up where it really should be.
So that's the temporary help then that we use?
We use
Essentially.
we use 2 temporary employees over there. And that's average about $18,000 a year each.
I don't.
You have 2 full-time employees over there, John and Mike. You have a city employee, Miss Dorothy, and you have your two temps.
What do you mean a city employee?
Well, that's the city temp. That's been there for years.
So you're saying we would need to bring on one more full-time temporary or part-time temporary?
No, because these 2 employees, 2 temps that I have over there now, I work them a full year, as long as it equals less than 1,000 hours.
And we've done that during the current budget cycle?
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, so we've had Public Works budget going into the recycling center?
Occasionally, I do send an employee or 2 over there to help out, particularly when they're on light duty, because we don't have any light duty or modified work in the departments. So I can send a spot over there to work on the sorting conveyor, and that's within their restrictions. Now, have I been, and what you're getting at, have I been allocating their salaries to recycle? No. That's an improvement and an opportunity that we should be looking at.
Terry, you know this is an area that I'm all for making as many improvements as possible, and I don't know if all of the information here points to a logical answer. It's something I'm going to have to decipher, but it's difficult looking at over the last 2 years a 40% decrease in revenues due to the lack of usage, an increase in budget request for 13%, and the council tried to do something with our solid waste removal, and we didn't get that backed up, so the community's not held to an environmental plan that's friendly for the earth.
So on the employee that we're bringing back over, I guess that's in the sanitation fund, is that right? The employee that we're bringing.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we're bringing that back over. I guess the problem is that this is like 50-50 with the county on this recycling service.
Right.
So I guess working toward the future, we need to make sure to accurately account for everybody that's out there, and if they're working out at recycling, make sure that's borne by the budget. I mean, I think that's the main issue going forward.
Right, that's what I was just mentioning to Brad, that there are some opportunities there as far as allocations.
And are we going to see a decrease over in the sanitation budget by the fact that we're moving the employee back over here?
We will.
Okay.
Terry, did I hear you correctly a minute ago when Brad was asking questions of that? And I might have misunderstood. Did you say there was 18,000 hours used by the temp services? Is that what I heard?
$18,000.
$18,000?
Right.
Okay.
Per, right.
It's a busy year.
Yeah, it's a, you got 9 temps full-time.
Yeah.
Hey, Terry, I know you mentioned this earlier, but help us again understand the revenue, what you're saying. Did you say there were more recyclables going to Lexington?
Well, you know, during the economic slump, and I watched this very, very closely, you know, for the last several years, and if you look at the revenues here, you will see a steady decline in them. What's been going on within the city of Georgetown is that a lot of folks out here is taking their own metals and scraps that they normally would bring to recycle and taking them directly, you know, to the scrap yard themselves. And we've even had break-ins up at the recycle center where they actually come in up there and steal items. So, you know, we've tried to increase security up there by putting in additional lighting. But this is what I am, you know, allocating this particular decrease for. And that's not just here, you know, it's all over the country. We're seeing this.
What items are you talking about? Like equipment, like appliances?
Appliances, sheet metals.
Right.
Now, I know there's a couple gentlemen that's got businesses where they go pick appliances right off your curb. You know, just pick them up.
Yeah.
That way there, instead of taking them to Terry, they'll just come by and get them, haul them at Lexington and sell them. So.
Yeah, we don't really know what percentage of our revenue comes from residential customers just dropping off.
I don't have that number, but I could go back to the office and figure it up.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I don't think, I mean, can you monitor that? Because there's not a monitoring system at recycling that people could be from anywhere,
Sure.
you know. Do you think as well that, I mean, the Herbie system, the Herbie started, and we're in our 7th year of using this without really asking the public to follow through totally. I mean, the council decided to do it on doing something, but the mayor's office had enough complaints that we backtracked on what we tried to do with the city. I mean, again, this is something we talk about. You and I've talked about. This is my 3rd term, and I'm still talking about it. You know, if either we expect people to participate, but maybe my opposite analogy, I don't disagree with your opinion on what's happened, but you know, if people can put anything at the curb that they want, then why take it to recycle? So,
That's it.
you know, I'd say it's in the landfill instead of in Lexington. But
I'd say my question, Terry, is the expense, the overhead that we have with selling our raw goods, the rate of the poundage or whatever, the rate that we're paying in order to cash that in, we're pretty solid there. We're not giving more and more and more of that to the broker. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the poundage that we're getting is actually dropping. It's not the rate that we're paying for the overhead to handle that waste or that recycling. That's not going up, because I know, like, we pay a per capita fee as I forget what it's called. Mayor, you may recall, we pay a fee per our population for someone to, I don't remember. You remember, Terry? I think it was like 53 cents or something like that.
Our per capita cost that we pay is $2,500 a year.
Okay, but those fees are not going up. The fees that we're paying, the percentage that we're paying for our hauler to haul the stuff off, that's not going up.
No, that's staying flat.
Okay, all of that's staying flat. It's just the receivables that we're getting is what's dropping. And you're saying it could drop by 40% this year.
Brad, it is pretty flat right now. You probably processing between 120 and 135,000 pounds a month. I have not seen it really go too much lower than that, and that's back where it was at in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now after 2008, we did go up to, some cases, 160 to 190,000 pounds a month. But as I said earlier, during this economic slump, things just start turning around for us.
Now, all they can really take somewhere else and actually get cash for it would be the metals. I mean, they're not taking cardboard and plastics, and that kind of goes back to what David was mentioning earlier. From a residential standpoint, not a lot of money in plastics and cardboard and newspaper. The money is in the metals and the white goods and those types of things. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we do have customers sometimes call us to make special pickups, and by the time we get out there to the curbside, it's gone.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you this, is that Chief Bossy and his guys went all the way to Richmond, Kentucky, and retrieved a whole bale of aluminum cans that we have already belted up, and put in the stockyard out there, waiting to be loaded. Somebody came out there and stole that. But we noticed that it was missing the next day, and the police department did follow up on it, and we found it in Richmond, Kentucky.
Wow.
And we did retrieve it. So these are the type of things that is happening within our city. People are trying to survive the best way that they can.
I guess I just want to make sure that our overhead to handle that stuff is not going up. I want to make sure it's the poundage going down rather than the overhead going up.
Yeah, I think our operation expenses is, and I'm very pleased with this. I said the overall department, went up $31,000 as far as requesting funds this particular year. But if you look at our operation costs, not look at the salaries and benefits, but operation costs, something that you can control. Last year we asked for $77,000. This year we asked them for $95,000, and that's the operation. That's an increase of $18,000, and the biggest portion of that you've seen that was in professional services. Then you've seen another $4,000 that was in motor fuel.
And will you be looking again this year to make sure that we still are operating with the right carrier?
Almost definitely.
Okay.
That's just a smart part of doing business, is always trying to look at that.
There you go. Thank you, Terry.
I think you wanted to do cemetery while you're up here, Terry.
I would like to.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, if you would turn to your cemetery pages. Again, if you look at cemetery, you look at the bottom line there. Last year, we had a budget of $250,781. This year, we're asking for $262,454. That's an $11,000 increase for cemetery. And again, the biggest area you'll see an increase there is $3,000 in professional services.
Is that temporary work as well, Terry?
That's temporary work as well. Gene, we only have 2 full-time employees in the cemetery. Those guys do an excellent job out there. And even on our temp workers, we use those guys seasonal. They're not there full-time, year-round the clock.
I see where you have on your capital request a dump truck.
We put a dump truck in there because our dirt, as we dig graves out there, Mark, we have so much excess dirt that we have to haul it off-site. And sometimes the Public Works Department, who's been doing it in the past, is just so busy out there because our workload is increasing too with the increase of the population. If you look at the number of Kirby cans that Kelly is talking about, we started off in 2007 to 2008 with 8,000 Herbies out there. Now we're picking up close to 12,000. So we've got an increase there. So Gene is looking at a way to get a dump truck where he can haul his own dirt off campus, also keep his roads in the wintertime clear of snow. You know, we would put a snow plow on that also. And that $40,000 that we have in there, that's somewhat an excess. We can get that dump truck a lot less than that.
Does Public Works, when they've done this work in the past, have they billed the cemetery
What, for hauling off the
to
dirt?
attempt to account for the cost back to Public Works of doing this work on the, what is a joint agency?
No, we have not. We've used that as the same way when we go over there and pick up their garbage, dump their dumpsters. So again, those are some opportunities that perhaps we do need to look at and do some more allocation.
How many dump trucks are in Public Works fleet?
Pardon me?
How many dump trucks are in the Public Works fleet?
5.
I think it's just one of those cases where if you do that accounting and within the budget, you'll actually, that's probably going to be the solution, perhaps, in terms of allocating the cost, because I'm not going to speak for the fiscal court, but I would think it's more palatable to just simply pay half the cost of Public Works coming in, doing the occasional pickup of dirt and dumping it somewhere, rather than spending half of the cost of a $40,000 dump truck to do this work, repeatedly. And we're not going to have winters like we had this past year. I mean,
We hope.
We
well, we hope not.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
well, we're not. We're not. It was an aberration. And then I'm using your terminology, a new buggy for digging graves. On the, what's that? The new buggy? The equipment in new buggy?
And that particular buggy there is similar like what you're looking at a golf cart. This particular budget here, we have one out there, but it's 12 years old.
Okay.
And it needs to be replaced. And what we use it for is to go into these close areas where they are digging graves, and they can take the dirt and haul it back up to the shed and put it in the shed so it stays dry. And it's used, to haul around small equipment. And it's just an all-around small vehicle. That I do support that. We do need to get that replaced along with the mower. On the dump truck.
What's the current? I mean,
Pardon me?
What is the current? What is it?
The current buggy?
Is it a Gator or
It's a Gator, yes.
It's a Gator.
I would almost rather see that come to us as an emergency budget allocation if it goes down really than going on and budgeting $23,500 for it.
Now that 23 is mower is going to come out of that too, Brad.
Okay.
You got 2 items that should be coming out of that.
Two items account for that 23.5.
Right.
Is the revenue, Terry, picking up
In
for the cemetery? Yeah.
Revenue is slightly going up, but not much. And I always tease Gene and tell him I wouldn't care if he didn't make a dime out there, but that's not the case. People will die.
Yeah, that may have been a horrible question.
but,
I apologize.
But
usually breaks out.
but yeah, cemetery do a good job holding us on. The revenue is going up. We are now using the garden out there now. We've had some folks come out there and start using it, the cremation garden.
Are we having success with that?
Yeah.
Good.
We just
Not
did.
good.
We
I'm
just
sorry.
did 2.
I apologize
we just
again.
did 2 more this week.
Terry, do you know how many available lots are left at the cemetery that have not
In purpose?
Been used.
either or?
Probably 10 to 12 more years worth.
10 to 12 more years?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At the rate we are going now. And then we would have to look at another area, go across the fence. I would say probably 12 years. Gene and I have been talking about this too. But there is an area out there right across the fence, next to the school. that we would like to have for an expansion, so.
I think it's set up to continue on going over onto the field.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about that for a while, Mark.
Anything else?
Anybody have more questions for Terry? Let's go ahead and jump on the park real quick.
Oh, it's not gonna be quick.
Get up there.
It's not gonna be quick.
No. If I know Miss Remley, it will not be quick.
Nothing, Jay?
Yeah.
Not fast, no big.
Yeah. I put the PowerPoint in front of you all. Just gonna kind of go over a couple of things. With our mission statement, what?
I don't know, I just thought we had 2 or 3 others that would be much quicker, because I know this probably will be extensive. You have a presentation.
It's maybe
She's
10
already
slides,
started.
13
She'll hurry
slides.
up, she needs to get home to the kids.
That's right.
She's already started.
Sure.
Just wanted to let you guys know with the marketing this year, we've also changed the mission statement a little bit. The Parks and Recreation Department continually strives to develop, provide, and maintain quality programs and facilities that meet the increasing needs of the growing community. And our vision statement is to be the state leader in promoting community health and well-being through fun, progressive, and memorable parks and recreation experiences and activities for everyone. Some of the benefits that we'd had, and we kind of touched on this, I touched on this a couple years ago with the presentation that I had given to you guys. The cost recovery model, the only reason I brought that back was because there's some individuals who are new on council that were not here at the last presentation that I had done, trying to explain how we set our funding or prices for our programming. The community benefit down here at the bottom being one that is completely subsidized through budget. That is going to be your festivals, your Easter egg hunts, things that are for community purposes. And then as you go up the pyramid to the very top are the highly individual benefits, and those are the benefits that are paid for completely by the individuals who are receiving the most benefit from that program. So it would be your private swimming lessons, pool parties, private parties, and those kinds of things. Kicking off, starting with the revenue projections that I have handed into you guys, as Stacy had mentioned earlier. Stacy had mentioned earlier, the revenue for this year, we are expecting an increase of $28,850. Did that go? Yeah, that's it. And this is kind of a breakdown of everything within our programs that I have in that first chart. So that's not city or county funds at this point. This is through aquatics, passes, programs, miscellaneous grants or donations that we get, concessions, and rentals. And the percentage of breakdown with that. Then the total revenue breakdown is the self-generated is 48%, with county and city being 26% apiece, and then the amount of that. And then over here as well, I have also put in there for your all's just the amount of an increase that I've asked for in that. So it was 2% generated from ours as an increase, and then 4% for the city and the county. But overall, you will see that it's a 5% increase in my budget request. The proposed budget breakdown, again, just categorizing everything out with the percentages of what our budget consists of. Salaries, utilities, outdoor park maintenance, indoor maintenance, programs, equipment, and supplies, and then administrative costs. The administrative cost, you'll notice, is the highest one. It's the 13%, but that's where the sufficity is put in as well. And then I've kind of broken those down as well. So the salaries break down to 52% of what we do is the part-time employees that we have. We cannot survive without them, just with the number of facilities the hours that we have to put in with those facilities. And then 48% of that being the full-time staff. Utility breakdown, again, just KU, Columbia Gas, water, telephone. And that just breaks down to what percentage of that overall first slide showed, and then what an increase is that we're asking for those as well.
Jerry, could I stop you
Yes.
just a minute? Do you have that increase on your utility bills because of this last winter that we've had? Were they?
There were some of that on there, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I didn't anticipate the full amount, just because I don't anticipate, like Mark said, us having another bad winter like that. But we definitely had some increases in, especially our gas bills, just because of trying to keep things heated and things like that.
Now, where do you use gas?
The pool, the pavilion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the administrative cost, this is basically what I've included here to show you all everything, is continuing education, travel expenses, office equipment, professional fees, advertising and marketing. The technology support, you'll notice, is the highest one there. Again, that's the Sophisticity, because we've never asked for any kind of tech support in any part of that as a line item. Then uniforms, drug testing, and our liability insurance. We did have a slight increase with our office equipment, but that's because we had to take care of a copier that we had some issues with at the pavilion. So that's going to be addressed in this next budget if we're able to do that. Some of the things that we have accomplished in being, and what I feel like is being fiscally responsible, we did complete an audit with KU at the pavilion to make sure that the costs that we were seeing there, especially with this winter, where we were with those things. And I was really pleased with the report. The opinion from KU rep in the report was that the pavilion falls in the effective category for its energy use of 173,818 BTUs, or $2.74 per square foot. The average use for this type of facility would be between 350,000 to 560,000 BTUs. So we're well under for that efficiency on that facility, and I thought that was huge, and I wanted to make sure you all were aware that we have made some improvements in that.
And that's on the KU energy audit?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Did they take into account that you use gas for heating?
Mm-hmm. I believe they did. Oh, Bill's gone, but I believe they did. I can get the report to you all. I can scan that and give it to you all.
Yeah, that'd be
and send
great.
it to you all just for your all's knowledge, so you have that report to look at as well. But that was something that I felt I was really proud of, that we were able to be efficient in that,
That's
especially
fantastic.
with that facility being as big as it is. We've also established the 501c3, and I'm currently working on the bylaws for that with an advisory group. This means we'll be able to solicit private donations to help with our fiscal needs, and that again was discussed in our 2012 budget proposal. So that too has come to fruition in the accomplishments that we've had. We have realigned some of the responsibilities for greater efficiency and effectiveness in cutting costs. We've created many programs this year to help with other partners, which again was one of the things that I had set out in 2012, and part of that is been establishing last year, and then talking with this year is developing the Lean 2013 program, and that was with the health department. We were really instrumental in getting that involved within the community, and we saw a lot of positive health benefits that came from that program. So, you know, we are reaching out into the community more of health initiatives and what we can create with that, as well as within our own staff, and creating healthy things that we can do within our staff to decrease those costs for health insurance. And then, of course, creating the new marketing campaign with plans to expand that further this year as well.
All right, I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
There we go. Everybody was just kind of quiet.
That's okay.
The 501c3, what part of the process are you in with that? Has that been established? Have you started
We have
raising funds
we have.
in that?
We have.
Okay. How much have you raised in that?
And it's not reflected in this budget because it was, and it probably should have been, but I don't anticipate it growing this exponentially next year is the reason it wasn't. But because of the Legacy Trail extension and the feasibility study that was required for that, there was approximately, I want to say, roughly 18,000 raised specifically earmarked for that. So I don't anticipate us obviously having that amount raised every year, because that was a special project that they wanted to see come through. And that's one of the benefits about having the 501c3 is if we do have individuals who would like to donate that money, they can earmark it for a specific project, or they can just donate it as a whole to the budget process.
You were talking about the increase that you were asking for the city and the county, and you said it was 5%?
Overall.
All right.
Well, I should say that's a 5% overall increase in what I asked for last year.
Okay, but I'm looking at it and I'm showing a lot more than that.
Okay.
I'm showing in your Parks and Rec, your general budget, an increase of 8.3% from 664,850 to 720,041. And then in your capital items, from 25,000 to 94,300.
It is 8% total. It's 4% for the city and 4% for the county. We're right there roughly at. That's what I broke down on the chart. It's a total of 8%, 4% for the city and 4% for the county. It's a 55,191 for both entities.
Yeah, but that's still based on what we gave last year, 55,000 of 664,850 is 8.3%. You can't divide out the increase and not divide out the total amount.
Okay, I'm not sure what you're...
Okay, we allocated 664,850, our half, last year. Our half this year, you've asked for 720,041. It's an increase of $55,000, which is 8.3%. That's not 5%. That's 8.3%.
When I do that, I don't know what formula you're using. I mean, I can tell you how I came up with that, but
The 8.3 was on a sheet we were given.
okay. 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 Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's not that complicated. We're overcomplicating it. We gave you 664,850 last year. You're asking for 720,041 this year. That's an increase of $55,191, which is an 8.3% increase.
Okay.
And in your capital items, $25,000 to 94,300 is an increase of 277.20. So that's not 5%. I'm curious as to where the 5% number came from.
Well, what I had taken was what we had last year and then cumulatively what we've done together and then subtracted that from the original, got that balance, and then divided it by the original. And that's how I'm coming up with my percentages.
Stacy, did we budget Parks and Rec at 664,850 last year? And the request this year is 720,041.
Yes, sir.
Jerry, would some of that 50?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
The numbers that are here are what I had asked for last year, not what I had gotten.
Okay, well, they,
664,850?
I'm sorry?
The 664,850, you're saying you didn't get all that?
That was what was finally, that was what was
That's what was
approved.
given to you.
Yes, that was what was given to me.
I think what she said was this number is 5% higher than what she asked for last year.
Yes.
Not what she got, but what she asked for.
Well, the hard expenses are the salaries. I mean, the salaries and benefits.
I mean, did you give them a copy of the line item that I had given? I mean, it shows
And that's,
line.
in quick math, it's about $54,000 are embedded within those hard expenses. The $54,000 increase are embedded in those hard expenses. So we're talking about a $110,000 increase citywide, I mean, agency-wide. So about $54,000, or about half of that is embedded in those increase in the hard costs. I mean, we're not talking about any decrease in salary, any decrease in personnel, obviously. And then you add in the Sufficity contract.
Correct.
That's 35, that's 89,000. So now we're just trying to find where you did the extra 21. Well, I mean, which I'm sure is somewhere in here, probably motor fuel, stuff like that.
Right,
So it's no-
right.
yeah, but if the 35 is the total cost for Sufficity, we would only be responsible for half of that.
Well, yeah, but
It would break down up here.
But I'm talking, I've already said the 110 is agency-wide.
Right.
And that's a shared cost in terms of the increase. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean.
It's not just 50, it's our share is 55 of the increase, but it's 110. 54 of that is the increase in the hard cost of the salary and benefits, plus the 35 on the Sufficity, that's 89,000. So now we got about $21,000 to go as far as explaining on the operating side. Is that correct?
Did you put the Sufficity in the capital?
No, that is,
You put it in the...
that is regardless of what happened with Sufficity. we have to have the program to go with, and that's what I was trying to explain the last time, is the 35,000 in the line item that you said you didn't understand, you and Kelly, and I talked with Kelly afterwards, but the line item that is in the operations budget is Sufficity.
Okay.
The line item that is in the capital budget is one that is the software that we have to purchase that is no longer being supported for our memberships at the pavilion.
Okay.
You know, what's interesting is that the salaries, although they go up, they don't go up.
They're 3%.
Yeah, proportional to like the FICA or the unemployment insurance or the workers' comp or the retirement. All those things have gone up far more significantly
Right.
than the 3%, which is essentially out of your control.
Right.
What is, let's move on, I guess. What is, I'm just not familiar with programs. You had revenue 42,000, 25,000 expenses regarding Kentucky Horse Park.
We actually staff the lifeguards there. We have a contract with the horse park, Kentucky Horse Park, and we provide the lifeguards there. It's a contract. It's
The campground? Is that-
yes, the campground, pool.
Is that a pretty favorable deal for
It
you?
is.
17, I think 17. Is Kids World a full-fledged Parks and Rec program?
Yes, it is.
And that's a revenue generating program,
It is.
isn't it?
And that's one of the reasons we had asked for, if you look in there, and please understand this capital, I understand by no means that I'm getting all of these items. I'm just giving you a list of the things that we, are looking for as far as capital that we need that we have not been able to get in the past. So please understand that I am fully aware that this is not an all-encompassing list that I will be getting. But one of the things that we did ask for was a 12 to 15 passenger van. It is used, but again, that right now what we're having to do is contract with the school system or a private transit bus to transport these kids on their field trips for Kids World through the summer.
What does that run you every time you rent that?
The van costs,
Yes.
around 2,200, pardon me, a month. Is what we used it for 1 month last year.
Okay.
And that was renting a van.
That was
Okay.
We were able to utilize our van and then rent a van as opposed to the transits.
Okay.
So if we could purchase that within 3 years, we would have made back what we needed. And obviously, that van would last longer than the 3 years.
Plus it's available when you need it.
Plus,
too.
it's available,
Yeah.
and, it's available if other agencies would need it within the city as well.
Does that come out of what's in the expense attributed to Kids World at 20,000 for transportation, lunch, and
Yes.
general expenses? That 20,000 figure.
Mark, you made the comment about the 21,000, roughly what we're talking about.
Yeah, once we
Take
get past
off
the
the
Felicity
superintendent,
and
take
the
off the,
salaries and Denny's,
all that
yeah.
stuff, those increases. You look at just the estimated utility cost increase, that's about 7,700 of
Okay.
the 21,000 right there, combined with the increase in pavilion equipment, which I think partly is the copier,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Which you'll see the increase here of 5,000, so.
You all buying a copier?
Mm-hmm.
Not putting that on capital? Okay, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
No, I didn't.
I don't judge.
I didn't.
Hold on.
I'll go on and ask you about the one part of your budget that's probably the biggest sticking point with me.
Okay.
Since January of 2012, you all have not inhabited the center of town building.
That's correct.
Since January of 2012, the city alone has allocated $212,500, I think probably plus the utilities, because I think they were broken out into a different line item in your budget, for the center of town programming. This past year, we rolled that line item up into your general government, or into your general budget. Honestly, I didn't necessarily approve that. I didn't approve of that myself because I thought that it was inherent that the expenses that we took on for the center of town programming were center of town programming. it's hard for me to reconcile your budget until we reconcile that $212,000.
Okay.
You know, if you look at it from the city and the county's perspective, that's $445,000 that has been given to Parks and Rec in the last 2.5 years that I think at least I anticipated with center of town programming in mind.
Well, that programming has shifted, and we've talked about that. And, you know, when you were talking with me about the center of town and trying to get back into that facility, that's one of the things that I had stated to you, was not all programs could be carried out because of space or different things within buildings. But, you know, there are some of those programs that have continued to go, either at the pavilion or at the county building.
Well, I think what you told us that night was that the only one that you all had been able to maintain was the Kids World program.
That's the largest one we've been able to maintain.
And you told us
Still
that
have
was
Fun
the only.
Express. We still have Fun Express. That was a site for the center of town that is now at the pavilion.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. We have Zumba that had been moved from the center of town, still out at the pavilion. We've added those classes in to cover at least one class that was there that we have the capacity for there. Robin Allen, as opposed to bringing the senior citizen group to her, she travels to that senior citizen, which is still expense in getting material and things like that for them. So she travels to the senior citizen building to be able to still do senior stretch and aerobics with them as well.
Jerry, that is not at all what you told us in that meeting that night. You told us that Kids World was the only one that you were able to maintain, and I calculated it within your budget as being about 16% of that budget based on just the city's expenditures, which I guess if you throw the county in, that would be about 8% of your expenditures. I'll say it again, I don't know that I can reconcile your budget, especially with an increase in any form or fashion, when we know that the majority of the programming that we were allocating money to towards the center of town is no longer in play. You know, we talk about the checkpoint program. That was a revenue generating program for you guys. And I think since you, that's why I said it's a revenue generating program. I'm fully aware of checkpoint, but you all have been generating revenue off of it while it's been in the center of town building, as well as in the county's blue building out there. You've still been generating revenue off of it. So that's kind of an offsetting penalty in the way I see it. I can't understand where $212,500 a year, or in the last 2.5 years, has gone for that programming. So for that in itself, I'm going to have a hard time understanding any kind of an increase in your budget. And in fact, probably will lobby for a decrease in your budget. And there again, that's based solely on the programming that we had at the center of town building, because that programming is very location specific, and it's the city's fault. We went through this when
It
we.
still doesn't mean that we don't have those costs associated with those programs, Brad.
But the programming for the center of town was location specific. The location derived a lot of the visitation from down there. It was, you know, it was a 30,000.
In the process of that, we have been trying to accommodate for something that
Absolutely.
were not in our control, but we still have
Absolutely.
those costs associated with those staff members, with the building, you know, as far as electric still being on so that the city can continue to do what they need to do in there.
So are you telling me that you've moved 30,000 visits to other locations for the programming that was
I
going
didn't
on
say
down
that.
there?
I did not say that. I told you that our numbers had gone down.
You told us all but 16% had gone away, is
No,
what you
I said
told
that
us.
was our largest program, Brad. That is the one that we
Well,
have been able to
go back and
sustain.
watch the tape. That's not what you said.
That's fine.
Let me ask you this.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, either one, I don't care. As far as the programming, I mean, to me, okay, let's walk through this, because there is one part of the budget we probably need to explain. it's center of town utilities,
Yes.
and you got 3,000 for Columbia Gas, 5,000 for KU, 1,000 for water, 1,000 for telephone. Now, is that utilities currently on at the building?
Yes, and
on
I talked
Oregon
with
Street?
Stacy about that after one of our council meetings and asked
Okay.
her specifically what I needed to do with that, considering we were still making those payments on those utilities. And she said that was site-specific because it was attached to the building.
So that is actually, those are the meters spinning at the building as we speak?
When they're utilized, yes.
When they're utilized.
Yes. Now, that's a projection, obviously, because it depends on who's going in there to do work. I mean, obviously, we had some individuals going in there doing some work, utilizing.
And obviously, that's a decision coming out of City Hall as far as when the building is being worked on, who might be in the building, since right now there is no Parks and Rec
That's
programming going on in the building. So even though that's in your budget, we really can't say that's under your control. Would you agree
That's
with me on
correct.
that point? Okay, good. Now, as far as every other expense related to center of town within your budget, is that related strictly to programming that would have been at center of town, but for the fact that you can't be in the center of town? Is all of that, well, you talked about the programming,
Right.
the various classes and whatnot. All of the expenses related to the center of town that you mentioned in the budget, is all of that related to programming that would have taken place at that building, but for the fact you can't be in that building related to the damage?
And the
And now
salaries
you're at the
that would be in
pavilion,
it.
and the salaries associated with it.
I think just to clarify one point that might be confusing the matter, you know, we can debate all day what was or wasn't said previously. I think what might be confusing the matter, just because staffing was allocated to center of town in the previous budgets doesn't mean that's the only place it was used. It might have been a Robin Allen whose majority of time, maybe 60% of her time, was center of town. And I'm only using that because Miss Allen's here. But the other 40% was doing other pavilion type support or other programming support. It just so happened that it was allocated in the center of town budget because that's where the majority of their time was. It would be completely inefficient for us just to hire staff only site-based, when obviously there's some sharing and efficiencies that can be created in regards to the staffing. And I don't know, perhaps it would be helpful if we provided a list. Here's all the programming that existed before. Here's the headcount that was associated with it. Here's what we do now, what we have moved, what's been eliminated, and the headcount that's associated with that and how it's allocated.
In essence, it's like in 2001 when we moved the library. If for whatever reason we continue to embed in the library's budget 230 East Main Street, and people would ask, well, what happened to the programmer? Why are we still paying people according to 230 East Main Street? Well, it's because all the programming moved to 104 South Bradford Lane. In essence, that's the same problem here. As long as everything is tied either to staffing, salary and benefits related to the programming or the programming itself, I don't really see a problem. I mean, I think the biggest problem then would become the amount of programming versus the investment that we're putting into it. But, you know, you guys didn't control the windstorm. Certainly have not
And there's
controlled the
folks like
two-year
Miss Allen who have picked up additional
vacancy.
duties, like her IT duties, to sort of offset. She's not doing this role. We have a gap. How do we, you know, begin to fill that, at least from the pavilion side and the level of support we can
You do the
provide.
best you can, putting the programming in the place where you can put the programming and see what happens with the building.
And I'm speaking for Jerry, but I think we'd be more than happy.
Yeah.
Jerry would be more than happy to put together that list of programming and headcount if that would be helpful.
I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, it's me. I wondered if you go back a slide and do you have any detail on the third point on one slide back as far as responsibility shifting combinations?
Oh, these?
And efficiencies, yeah.
Just some things that we have done in-house, realigning some internal things within specific job duties, you know, where as opposed it might be practice prior to call contractors to have something done. Now we're looking at seeing what our staff can handle on their own internally prior to calling those contractors out. You know, as far as POs and those types of things, and trying to get a tighter rein on that. There have been stipulations and things put in for more accountability for our program managers of what they're allowed to purchase on a PO. Obviously, we have to initial, but Sherry or I initial those, but no large purchases that aren't, you know, communicated to us. So there's just some internal things that we've done policy-wise to kind of make some better efficiencies within. And one of those things, as I was telling you at the last meeting that we had, one of those things is I'm hoping will be that software that we are able to put in that's from the capital item for the pavilion, and that will help us to increase efficiency there at the front desk with redundancy in work that we're having to do at this point, just because of the software program that we have and the age that it is.
So Mary made reference to shared services between the center of town and Parks and Rec.
I think what you're doing is you're separating this building over here, this building over here, and this building over here, but together they form Parks and Recreation.
Well-
So one building is not Parks and Recreation.
I realize that, but we were budgeted that way, and it was set up that way a long time ago to protect the programming that went on in that building.
But you all accepted the budget last year as a combined budget.
Can I finish my question? Do you all mind? What percentage of the budget that we were putting into the Parks and Rec, or I'm sorry, into the center of town budget, and that the county was specifically allocating into the center of town budget, what percentage of that line item was being shared and not actually being spent at the center of town?
I don't have a way of getting that to you, Brad. I mean, it's the same way with me. My salary is in the pavilion budget or Parks and Recreation budget, but I don't spend my entire time there. I go to Ed Davis. I went to the center of town. I go to Suffaletta through the summer or when we're having contractors out there. So, to say that one job is specific to one part of the budget doesn't make sense for us in the capacity that we operate. Our indoor maintenance is the same way. They're in every facility that we have, so to specifically put them into one facility and not expect them to operate in any other facility doesn't make sense for us in the way that we operate. So I can't break it down to you.
So, for a number of years, we've been allocating a center of town budget, and the county has been allocating a center of town budget. At least for me, with the assumption that the budget was going to the programming in the center of town and with staffing in the center of town and with the utilities in the center of town, and it wasn't.
And that's the reason why with this new budget, those things were moved up into administration as opposed to the center of town.
And I don't think it's fair to say it wasn't going to it, but understand some of those things are shared. So if it's 100% of Miss Allen, maybe a portion of it, the majority, I can't say what the budgeting process was then, I wasn't involved.
Right.
But when those things were carved out for center of town.
Nor was I.
40% was at pavilion and 40% was at center of town because the majority was at center of town, was allocated there. I can't say what the process
Right,
was.
But I'm not
Don't say
talking.
that none of them were allocated to the center of town because they.
No, I didn't say that none of them were. What I'm saying is if 40% of her time was spent at the center of town, then that should have been taken out of 100% of the budget that we were putting into the center of town.
But I can't answer
What I'm
that.
asking is how much of what we were putting into a line item that specifically said center of town was not going to the center of
I
town.
can't answer that because from the moment that I developed this budget, being hired in, that budget was developed. So when I developed this budget, I included those salaries from those facilities and put them into the administrative part of things. So they are no longer associated. The only thing that is associated now are the part-time staff members that are required to be utilized to carry out the programs that we have for that. So all of that full-time staff that was allocated to a specific building, it didn't make sense to me, so I put it in the administrative costs as far as salaries with administration. And so now if you look, it's program managers, and that's all of our program manager full-time.
So then let me ask you a follow-up question then. On the Ed Davis budget, do we now assume that at least a portion of the Ed Davis budget is not being spent
No,
at Ed Davis?
He does not come to the facility only to pick up mail, if he gets mail there.
There would be maintenance and things like that, that would be in the pavilion budget.
No, that's all, it's all in Ed Davis.
See that? Then that illustrates my point exactly as to why we used to have the center of town budget, because we assumed that the exact same process that's in place for the Ed Davis Center would be in place for the center of town.
There are some shared, obviously you,
Right, if Sherry or I have to go down there to fix something, or Robin Allen has to go down to fix, which we have for IT issues, then yes, we have to go down there. Ed does not come out of that facility. None of Ed's salary is spent anyplace else other than Ed Davis. He doesn't come out for anything else. If we have a staff meeting would be the only reason, or to pick up his mail from the pavilion. But as far as conducting programs and those kinds of things, he does not.
And see, I
we
guess-
have the shared cost.
Yeah, and I guess
there.
that would be my fault for assuming the same would apply with the center of town.
Jerry, do you
Yeah.
pay anything for the blue building?
I'm sorry?
Do you pay anything, any rent for the blue building at the county park?
I would have to check with Donna to make sure, because she gets those expenditures in, and I don't know how much of that is covered by the county and how much of that we actually get through any billing that we have through the county with the parks. So I would have to check and see how that divides up.
Are you going somewhere else? Sorry.
Not for the blue building, but there's other costs associated with other parts of the park that we do pay for on certain fields and things like that we do. I don't know, I'll have to get with Dawn and Julie. I can show you what we pay with them, but we do get billed for those items from our budget.
But not for the rental of the blue building or
No, we
as
do not.
such?
No, we do not pay for the rental of the blue
Okay.
building. No, we do not.
Which programs are in the blue building?
It just depends on where we are in our programming parts of things. I mean, we carry them out there like, right, Kids World will be going out there, Fun Express will be going, it's just season sensitive of what we utilize it for.
But Kids World is a summer program, correct?
Fun Express
Is a
year-round
school year.
program.
But does it run through the summer as well?
No, that's when Kids World
takes over.
kicks in.
I mean, I'm looking at the 2011 numbers you presented to us. So we'd have that. That was the last full operational year at Center of Town. So that's what I'm going back to.
Okay.
But only those two, Kids World, Fun Express at the blue building? Are there others?
At the moment, that's the only thing that we've been able to put out there with rentals and things that go with that.
We have tried other programs, but because of the location, it has not been successful.
And that kind of
The facility
illustrated my
design
point
too.
with the center of town. There are certain programs that are much more successful
And I agree with you.
location-wise
We
in
said
there.
that, you know.
Right.
But what I'm trying to
Right.
get you to understand is that just because those certain programs weren't able to continue there, we still are offering other programs at other costs that are continuing to go on until we figure out what's going on, or until everybody figures out what's going on with the COT.
And
So
those-
just because the building isn't there doesn't mean that we don't still have staffing and programmatic costs associated with the services that we're providing there.
So those should be reflected in attendance numbers somewhere
And I can-
else.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
30,000 visits that are no longer at the center of town are somewhere else within the Parks and
Throwing
Rec.
30,000, and I keep saying, I'm not gonna say 30,000, because I don't,
Well,
I'm just,
that's the
whatever
numbers you gave
a
us,
portion
is
of
what I'm-
those numbers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're talking a time,
A
please.
portion of those numbers
Mm-hmm.
that are accounted for, and yes, we do have them, and I can get those to you.
Yeah, the 2011 figure is
That's
29,297 visits. Of that, Kids World and Fun Express accounted for 41% of the usage. Those two programs. An additional 43% a separate 43% of that is the game room usage, where, you know, I mean, we're talking, what, 80, nearly 85 or 85% of the usage was from the game room, Kids World, and Fun Express at the center of town, in the middle of town.
I agree.
And with the game room, I mean, that's the only cost associated with that is gonna be
Staffing and, oh,
the part-time staffing.
Staffing.
So it's not as those, you know.
So, I mean, when you first did the budget, when the building was unavailable after the windstorm, I mean, you basically went in saying to yourself, okay, I'm not going to be able to use the building, so I'm going to subtract out the costs associated with utilities and the like largely, and just budget for the programming and the staff to provide the program.
well, I mean, I
Is that correct?
reduced those things, but I didn't cut them out completely,
Yeah,
because
I
my
know.
assumption was we would be back in the building within 6
wow.
months.
Yeah.
So
Mine too.
obviously, if I had cut everything out of the budget and then gotten back into the building, you know, then we would have been in the negative of trying to operate. So there were cuts made in it, but I didn't cut it out completely, no.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Anything else?
And obviously, the programming might change over the last 2 years. I mean,
Correct.
Same way the programming might change if you were still
Right,
currently
and
in the
as you,
center of town.
you know, if you all recall, when we were putting all of this together and trying to, you know, get a feel for where we were going with the center of town and the future use of that, there was individual programs put together that the dates were to be announced on those things, so that we could show you all that even though the building wasn't there, we were planning on that building coming back. We were planning on programmatic things happening beyond just what we had originally had in that facility as well. Because our hope is that with some change and some upgrades and some things, we would be able to have that ability to go back in there and utilize it for additional programming beyond what we were using it for, so.
One more thing, while we still have a member of the board here, and you as well. There's been talk out of Washington of raising the minimum wage, and that always affects Parks and Rec more than any other department that we have. Since most of those minimum wage costs would seem to be borne by some of the enterprise-related business enterprise activities, is there a lot of flexibility from the board, or at least as far as down the road, in terms of raising rates and fees to reflect those costs rather than putting those back on the city and county, the 50-50 share?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, you know, and I'll let you address this as well. From my perspective, that's one of the reasons why when we were talking about in my interview how, you know, whether I got the position or not, one of the things that had to be established was a 501c3, because the way we knew operations changed from the moment the economy tanked. Everything for every city department, every interlocal, it changed. And so that was one of our challenges, was trying to figure out how we were going to be more self-sustaining. Obviously, we can't do it 100% because our mission is about providing it to everyone in a community fairly and equally. But, you know, we've definitely in the past raised fees to be able to accommodate things within a budget. And we've also started the 501c3 now, which I didn't put it in here, but I am hopeful that we will be able to utilize that to be able to generate revenues as well.
From the board's perspective, Jerry mentioned we did increase some pass rates last year. For us, it's kind of about that sweet spot. So we raised it. We found out the amount we had raised it, which we thought could, you know, that it could be accommodated. Actually ended up doing the reverse for us, and we started generating less revenue even though we'd increased it. So we actually brought them down a little bit from that. And certainly right now we seem to have found that sweet spot for the moment that allows us in our current competitive environment to still maintain an increase in the overall revenue we're generating without seeing a decrease in the passes. So we're looking at all the time to make sure that we have that balance. And from a competitive environment, we are operating in, you know, a much different environment than we were even 5 years ago. Our rates, of course, are much different because they reflect the pool. But if you're not interested in the pool, then going to Elite Fitness for $25 a month, you know, it's difficult for us to compete with. So we're always looking at those types of things as well.
It's just you can see an increase of minimum wage perhaps in the next 3 years of 42%. And I know how much that hits you guys, and that's going to hit us. So, and most of that activity seems to be, you know, lifeguards.
Yeah, significantly for those
concession
part-time
staff
folks.
on the enterprise. Yeah, the enterprise-related activities, it seems to hit more than anything else. So that sort of flexibility is needed.
Jerry, I did have one quick question along those same lines. Is there you probably do this, but is there some marketing effort that goes towards senior citizens, or is there, and I guess there's some savings that they
Yeah, and that's one of the
realize?
things I was addressing with Kelly after the last meeting too, is, you know, and I'm not trying to, I mean, I am trying to obviously get this software program because we do desperately need it, but a lot of the functions that even Kelly as a member or a pass holder at the pavilion has come to me with, you know, concerns that he may have about things that we cannot do at this point because of the software and the age of the software. The new software that I'm looking at, we will be able to generate those things and use that more as a marketing tool as well, and it's specific. So we can send out broad mass emails to everyone regarding closing times or things like that, or we can categorize the data and send it out to specific groups of individuals.
It just seems like to me that that's a segment of the population that has some time during the day, you know, when the kids are in school, and probably the facility may be a little bit underutilized at that time.
The majority of our programming, if you look at it honestly, David, is the majority of our morning, early morning to, I'd say probably at least 1 o'clock, is that senior population.
Okay. And I guess you all are always thinking of activities and things that
And
can
we
be
get
done.
a lot of community input. I mean, obviously, they're very vocal groups, so
Yeah.
we get a lot of feedback. We get a lot of feedback of things that they like or that they don't like, and so we are constantly, with program manager meetings and different things, we're constantly trying to figure out how to accommodate.
Yeah, like a particular subdivision here in town that might cater to senior citizens. I'm almost afraid to mention the name, but I'm going to. White Oak, for example. I mean, are there some efforts to go after that group?
Not at this point.
Would it be worthwhile to go and sit in at a HOA meeting and
It will,
maybe?
but I will tell you, I shouldn't say not at this point, not targeted like that.
Yeah.
We do little smaller things, but not direct target market now.
Okay.
And it's kind of been difficult for us to be able to do that as well because, again, it's a staffing issue.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have the staff to go and make those marketing phone calls or marketing calls, and that gets quite difficult. Whereas you can generate it through a computer and have a letter, to go out, or generate it through the phone system to make an automated call about memberships or programs that are coming up or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's something that obviously would benefit us a lot to cut back. And again, it's getting back at those efficiencies that we would be able to use.
I would bet that if you and Mary showed up at one of their group meetings,
They would
that
scare them to death.
enrollment would skyrocket.
There you go.
And I'm serious.
If nothing, if for no other reason, is to get us out of the rain.
And that's right. That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things for me at least. It's been difficult trying to. This is such a large department, and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people in the community do not recognize that happens.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And it's very difficult for me to find a lot of time to be able to get out into the community other than what meetings are scheduled. I mean, 3 Mondays out of my 4 Mondays a month are committed.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's fine. That's part of what I need to be doing, and I welcome that. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is more of my New Year's resolution, so to speak, is to actually get out into the community more. And I was talking with Jack about presenting at the chamber here in the next couple of months and getting on there as a speaking engagement, going to the hospital, and just kind of getting us in the community more, because through those efforts and initiatives, and we should be able to start generate some money that way as well.
One thing that I know you haven't been here all that long, but some of the others have heard me make suggestions. When I travel places, which I don't get to do that often, but when I do, I try to pay attention to what's going on in those communities and try to bring back ideas or suggestions, whether it's landscaping on the interstate or anyway, just to cut to the chase, more recently, I had the opportunity to visit, I guess it was a residential project in Florida that catered to senior citizens, and it was activity after activity after activity. It was amazing what was going on and the level of communication that they had. So maybe you all could invite them to the pavilion so that they get a firsthand experience. Not only you all going to see them, but maybe they get the opportunity to come and have a free pass for a day. And I know that's part of some of the things you all do.
Get that van that she needs, they could be also pick them up.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Jerry, I asked you
earlier. It's a small piece, but I just wanted to throw it out.
Absolutely.
I asked you earlier about the reserves in the 501c3. Are you all carrying a reserve in your budget?
No. As far as the 501c3 itself?
No, in your budget.
There is a little bit, Brad, but I don't remember the exact amount. I know it's not enough to cover the employees should all of them leave at one time. We do not have enough in our reserve to cover, no offense, but Robin Allen's been with us for 20 years, 22 years. Sherry's been with us for 16. Donna Brandenburg's been with us for almost 20. So there are some, and Gary Power, there are employees there who are eligible to retire now that if, God forbid, I really messed up and they all hated me and decided to leave at one time, we would not be able to cover that.
Can you get back with us on that?
I can.
You're not the only department, though, that would feel those effects.
Right.
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 Can you comment on the branding? I was looking back at your budget proposal from last year and your comments and the direction you went with the Big Fish Company and possibility of integrated social media and website development and branding. And I'm not everywhere, but I also think of this in terms of Falling Springs facility in Versailles
Right.
and some of the marketing they've done. And I have not seen, outside of the pavilion, I've not seen our logo. I mean, I'm not
Right.
everywhere that you may be, but what's happened with that? I mean,
Well,
we're at
that's
the
part of-
end of this. We're at the end of this
Right.
year, and that was a project that started 2 years ago.
Part of that is, we didn't ask for additional money in marketing, but I didn't decrease that marketing line item either.
Mhm.
So part of that is building to be able to get it out there. The original part of what we asked for was to cover the contract and to cover, those design items that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
as well as getting the uniforms, for all the staff, not just at the pavilion, because it is an all-encompassing Parks and Recreation. So to kind of get out of that mindset of the Ed Davis, of, Cephaletta, of the pavilion, we did order staff shirts that had the logo on them, to get those things out. And then we are looking at trying to get some promotional items and stuff out there as well. But it really comes down to the majority of that money went to pay for that Project Big Fish.
We have included in all of our electronic media,
Mhm.
Facebook page. It's difficult for us, there's so much signage around. We're trying to gradually, piece by piece, replace it on the signage that's out in the community at the parks, but frankly, it's a huge task because there's so much of that out there.
What's the
A long time to do it with limited funds.
What's the name of the Facebook page? Is it?
GSC Parks. We're also starting a Twitter too.
We are.
Just nominated the Twitter chair.
Well, there was a pavilion.
Instagram, yeah, hit DTF, Instagram, or Twitter.
Can we go through your capital
Yes.
capital? I know it's kind of on the downslope, but let's take a look at it.
Mhm.
You got a repaired Dectron unit
Yes.
at Pavilion. Can you tell me about that, please?
That is, a necessity. We,
Well,
obviously,
they're
they
all
all are,
necessity,
but,
yeah.
if this is not taken care of, we had a compressor that actually went down. We have, 2 units that, handles the air quality for the pavilion. And so in the event that, that goes out, we will not be able to even breathe at the pavilion, because it exchanges that air from the aquatics area as well as the, opened area within the pavilion. So that compressor, we've been told is very shaky.
Is that on, are you all on, oh wait, you told me, Columbia Gas. You're not on geothermal out there. You're
No.
on, just, okay. All right, I think the pavilion locker room floors you tried last year. and,
I'm sorry?
The pavilion locker room floors, is that putting in the non-skid
Yes.
floor? You tried that last year, right?
We were able to do some portions of it last year, and this would be finishing up the remainder of that.
Pickup truck maintenance, four-wheel drive, 20.
Yes, we have a vehicle that is outdoor, that is the diesel, and it's the only one that we have, and with the capacity to pull the trailers for the trucks, or for, I'm sorry, for the tractors. So we are, and it's,
Is that the
I
one with
can
the
get,
blade?
I'm sorry?
Is that the one with the snowplow?
Yes. So I can get you pictures if you all want to see pictures of what's going on with that vehicle.
So that's taking the tractors from park to park?
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
The same, are you saying? Currently, the one with the snow plow attached to it is the one you use in the summer to move it. Okay.
How old is the one that you have now? Did you say?
I would say at least 12 years old.
12 years old?
Hmm. Now, I can definitely get back with you. That is a very broad guess, but I can get back with you on it. I've got a list of all of our fleet vehicles and years, so I can get back with you on that.
Okay, Pavilion park, is that restriping on the pavilion parking lot or
That is
re-asphalt?
fixing humongous potholes that
Yeah.
we have.
Is that just,
A full repave or
is it full, fixing?
No, that is not a full repave.
Just fixing the pothole?
Yeah.
Yeah, I about lost my car in one of them.
Yeah, it's awful, and we have, had patchwork done to try to accommodate, but it is, it's bad.
Okay, the slide repair on the pavilion.
That's the indoor slide there at the pavilion, and basically that's just from where it's exposed to the atmosphere that it is. It's chipping paint, and it needs to go in, and we need to sandblast that and just touch up, repaint.
Mostly the structure of it rather than the actual slide.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And then repair and paint slide stairs and structure. That's on the stairs.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's a whole.
And what about the 4 sets of bleachers? Or is that inside?
That is the outdoor bleachers in the park system. That's baseball and football bleachers.
Where at? Is that over on
Marshall.
Marshall.
Mm-hmm. Or I guess it would be softball and football.
8 picnic tables, and then the funbrella. Seems like the
Umbrellas are
funbrella.
the umbrellas
Yes,
that
the funbrella has had
Cephaletta.
Okay.
We replaced one of those last year with Capital. We're trying to get on a schedule where we are not replacing them year after year. But obviously, there's a lot of wear and tear, putting them up every day all summer long. And then to try to preserve them as much as we can, we do remove them completely in the winter once the season's over and house them in the basement of that facility.
And then, of course, we talked about the passenger van.
Mm-hmm.
The patio furniture in the pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
Did we do that last year? I thought we did that last year. Did we take that out?
We had put that in there last year as part of that, and I did talk with Donna about going back and looking at that because that may have been one of the projects that was completed with that capital last year.
And then the fitness equipment, is that in the main fitness room or?
No, that is just, and Mary can, we've had some of our programmers come to us, our fitness programmers, land programmers, who are needing some equipment that needs to be replaced, that's just aging equipment. Not for the fitness room, it's for the classes themselves.
Fans, balls, stuff like that, just to be able to compete with some of the classes offered at other facilities.
And the other one, the very last one, is probably up there, right up there with the Dectron unit, and that is the handicap lift at the pavilion. We are required by ADA to have those things. The one that's at the pavilion, while it is functioning, it is a very, in my opinion, subpar function for what we need it for.
Why? Is it too slow?
It's very slow. It's very aged. We are experiencing some issues if we have larger patrons trying to utilize it to get out or in the pool. It's not a safety issue at this point, but my fear is that it potentially could be.
Back on the fitness equipment, you said balls, bands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But no big heavy equipment.
No heavy equipment. This is all for our program classes, the mats, the bands, smaller hand weights that our senior population utilizes. Just for program stuff.
All right.
You've got under Kids World Transportation, you've got $12,000. Would that be negated if we approve the purchase of the truck?
Yes, it would be.
The van, you mean?
The van.
I'm sorry, the van, yeah.
It would be. Mm-hmm.
We could put them all on trailers.
Hey.
What? Except
I would
for
love to
field
ride on the back of the
Hey,
truck.
rides. Hey,
Except
rides.
for the
every day.
long distance, Robin Allen's telling me, Brad, Robin Allen's telling me, except for the long distance field trips, obviously, we wouldn't want to
Why
take
you
those
put
vans
bells on
to
the back.
Kings Island. We go to Kings Island or the Louisville Zoo or those kinds of things, so she's been able to really negotiate with some of the transits on those larger, longer trips, I guess I should say. But for those that we do around town, and the smaller field trips, yes.
If the cost of it would still remain for the long distance trips, be covered by the fees that the children pay to go on the trip. A lot of it will be.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is.
Because that,
So that
Kids
number-
World is a revenue generating,
Yes, it is.
does it pay for itself?
We're about $2,000 at this point in paying for itself.
Okay.
No.
So if we bought a van, y'all would be profitable in that particular program.
I'm thinking at least by $200.
The pothole work at the pavilion, I think we just spent several $1,000s on a hot box with Public Works. Have we worked with Terry in the past to see if he could help us do the pothole work, or?
I don't know. Bill Parker usually handles that, so I know he was here earlier, but he is gone. So I believe he has worked with the city in the past to kind of see, at least get an opinion of where we needed to be with it. And I believe he's the one that that the city, and I don't quote me on this, Brad, but I believe he does communicate with them to see who we need to talk to about getting all of those things redone. We do utilize him as a resource.
Have we patched any holes out there, Terry?
We normally do that, go into parking lots and put potholes, but as you was mentioning that's another deal as far as allocation. If you really want to truly get into allocation, we'll have to look at how we're gonna be building to import that work.
So you're saying we have not done that up until now?
Not in our parking lot.
Okay.
Can you comment where we are with Checkpoint? Because when I commented earlier on Center of Town, I was confusing Kids World and Checkpoint in the usage numbers for the Center of Town. Where is it, or what is it?
When I
at
talked
this
with Miss Ruby at the beginning of the school year, she was worried about whether or not she would even have enough kids to do the program at the Blue Barn. And then in speaking with her numbers and with the board made the decision to, I guess, do away with.
Give her notice that.
Gave her notice.
Yeah, based off the current situation, we wouldn't renew the contract for the rent for the blue building, based off the current situation of the uncertainty of the Center of Town facilities. So it seems like that was the most viable location for her and her program long-term, in terms of the space that they needed and the location that they needed.
Okay.
So Kelly, is that what you were saying? You were adding those, you were adding Checkpoint rather than?
I misspoke because Checkpoint alone was 26% of the usage in 2011. Kids World and Fun Express were only 16%.
Which is
and
Staffing costs from our side.
what's that?
Checkpoint wouldn't have staffing costs from our side.
Right. They were revenue generating as well. Checkpoint with all of the rentals accounted for 32% of the usage in 2011, the calendar year. So I misspoke those because I added the wrong columns.
That's where the 16% came from then, isn't it?
Right.
Two questions. On the pavilion parking lot, I know it's a cost allocation and trying to account for it in some way, but it might be pretty good to at least look at the possibility of using the city's hot box, the Public Works. If there needs to be some sort of recompense there, I think we can probably scratch the salaries and just the asphalt itself, the cost thereof, and maybe gas. Second point is I guess on the cost allocation, both city and county funds. For example, on the Dectron unit at the pavilion, is there a part in the pavilion's budget where that cost is accounted somehow through the user fees in some small way, either a percentage thereof, where you build in and save toward a maintenance fund out of the user fees?
We do try to. Again, our issue is, we can't obviously generate enough to cover everything that goes along with it. But yes, some of those fees that we do generate within goes towards those maintenance, the maintenance of the facility, and us being able, to every year when we have shutdown, there's a lot of that goes into that cost as well, that you all don't necessarily see all the time on the capital expenditures. But that's part of why we do it, is because in doing that, we're able to shut the facility down and we're able to maintain what we have for the longevity of our equipment.
That's maintenance costs related to ongoing maintenance.
That's correct.
Right. For example, the guy, like paying a service technician, in other words. I guess what I'm talking about is, and I wouldn't expect it to be a full allocation, but somewhere I think you said around 30% or 40% of your budget that comes out of user fees. Is there a particular fund or a particular place in the budget where you're setting aside, say, the anticipated cost of, say, the Dectron unit 40% of that, match the amount that we usually get from user fees, and at least pay some toward the maintenance or some toward the replacement, the anticipated replacement of that unit or other things that you
There
replace.
has,
Anticipate
as
replacing.
far as actually line iteming it out like we have here, no, there's
Okay.
not. I mean, we do look at those things, I do look at those things and
Okay.
look at the revenue and see, where we are with those things. I start the budgeting process in October after the first quarter's over. I start pulling numbers and looking at everything. So, if I see that there's something that's going on, it's really about cutting expenses everywhere else to try to make sure that there's enough to cover what needs to be covered, unless it's something that obviously we just can't do. But no, to line item it out, we do not.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty, I guess, more sophisticated step. I mean,
Mhm.
down the road, it's like a Steve
Mhm.
Glass kind of move. But anyway, I wouldn't necessarily, expect it. But I mean, it is something down the road, maybe the board to look at is say, let's carve out this amount
And as
out
we
of
start
user fees
generating,
and put it.
right, and as we start generating, especially with that 501c3, that's what I would like to be able to go to, is start to show you all exactly where those funds that haven't been earmarked for other places go to.
Okay.
In that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Break.
Greg.
Thank you.
Get some caffeine in my head.
All kicked off. on the board.
Session.
Where'd I put on the board?
Okay, Ms. Connie, what do you have next?
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement. Going the wrong way there.
He wanted to get the spotlight.
Yeah, that's it.
He blinded me when he walked through there. Hit him on the head.
That was
cold.
Okay. Code enforcement.
Good evening. On behalf of Chief Bossy, the Code Enforcement Department, representing Tracy, or Stacy. Okay, great. He's asking for an increase of $440 on training and conference attendance. Just to get this position certified as it needs to be, because I was not a building inspector coming into this position. The other item is a $300 increase on the computer and software to upgrade the current equipment that's there. And the largest one, of course, is I'm hoping that there's at least one vehicle left on this car carrier truck that the city's going to have to get. Capital expense of a vehicle. There's two options that he's presented. Both of them Ford Explorers. One being 4x4 at $29,889.68. The other one being a two-wheel drive, same vehicle at $25,959.68. It's going to replace a 15-year-old. I think it's got 134,000 miles F-150 pickup that is not very serviceable at this time. Their police department is currently allowing me to drive one of their pool vehicles, and it's just now getting ready to hit 107,000. So the largest thing, of course, is the capital expense for the vehicle. So pretty easy. I'm trying to be easy on you guys.
How easy is that?
No questions? Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Save them for Jack.
62 minutes.
Good evening.
In order of precedence.
I think he looks pretty good in the LTD myself.
I'm here to answer questions.
You go to Jack's section. If you have any questions.
One thing, Jack, Mr. Donovan, the telephones. You got
Yes.
$6,000 on your telephone line item.
Mhm.
You got two people working in your department,
Yeah.
and that's $3,000 per year per person, about $250 per month per person.
Okay, that's not per person.
Okay.
We have two people, but we actually have 10 employees. We had 8 volunteers. We'd love to have 10 paid staff, but I think we're one of the only departments that have volunteers. When we activate our EOC, we have, the EOC staff. We have 23 phone lines in our facility. When the EOC's went operational, we have to operate pretty much the city and the county. We run business, and we have to have that many phone lines there. We're also the backup for the 911 center, so we have to have capabilities to do that. We have computers, and we have modems. It's all utilized with radar. We do a lot out of our office. It's not just two people.
Okay. Thanks. Say you're in need of an additional employee.
We are, but we're not going to do that this year, but we would like to have a new employee one of these days. It's, last time that we hired somebody was in 1992. The county's doubled in size since 1992. I think we're probably the only department that hasn't hired somebody since 1992. But eventually, we'll need to hire somebody. Our call volume has gone up tremendously since then. We're still operating, you know, the two of us are the ones that are going on all the calls. So, you know, it'd be nice to have days off occasionally. So, you know, but not complaining, because we do get our days off, you know, but it causes a lot of overtime.
Last call you were on. What was,
Huh?
what was the last call you were on?
Let's see, it would have been either yesterday or the day before. I had 2 calls.
Okay. And of course, I see the
And our
command
call-
post.
Go ahead.
The command post vehicles in there.
Yes,
as well.
and we're not asking for that either. Again, that was just a item that we put in our budget every year. It's a 1986 model. We also have a 1999 truck. We have 2 other trucks that are newer.
Do you guys keep a call report or a call log? I think a lot of us may not know exactly what all you guys do respond to.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you can provide us with?
Mm-hmm. We turn in a monthly report to the mayor every month with all of our runs on
Okay,
it.
yeah, we don't get that.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, we'll ask for it.
You make a note, Stacy? Thank you.
Mr. Donovan, what is your increase? You have a slight increase over last year. What is that for?
Okay. Let's see. We've asked for $2,000 in our siren budget, and that is for increase in siren costs, maintenance of our sirens. What's been happening in the last several years is by the end of probably by the second month in the budget year, we're down to under $100 in our budget. And it's too risky. We have to take money out of our other line items to pay for our siren costs. We've asked for an increase in, I'm looking at 2 different budgets so I can tell the increases. We've asked for an increase in from $100 to $2,000 in our building maintenance line item. That's simply because of our age of our building. We need some money in there to maintain our building. We do spend, we use volunteers for all of our maintenance work, but there are some costs involved in that, so we do have to buy some things. And we're asking for $5,000 in our vehicle maintenance line item. Again, because of the age of our vehicles, command post, and our other vehicle. You know, there's a lot of repairs go into those vehicles when they're that old. We're asking for an additional amount of money for some hazmat costs that have gone up. Some of the fees that we pay are based on per capita, and that's going to double this year. We're asking for a uniform increase this year. In the past, we've used gear. Our hazmat gear has always been used, hand-me-down from the fire department. This year, we're requesting new gear for our volunteers. And we will not be able to buy all new gear, but we are requesting some new gear for our volunteers. And that's probably the bulk of it. I will say that we do have other volunteers too outside of these a total of our 10 or 8 But we could not operate without our volunteers, and our volunteers have saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, and we're very proud of our volunteers.
Hey, Jack, the vehicle that you have, that was 1986, was that the one that Sid Heisel was
Yes.
involved with? You still have that one?
Yes.
I guess he kind of helped get EMA up and going. Was he involved with?
He bought that actually over 2 budget years, 2 budget cycles, at the end of one and the beginning of another. That truck, because of the call volume that we have now, and because of it's been remodeled on the inside. It was never designed actually for the use that it's being used for now, and it still works. We've done a lot of work on it mechanically. Last year's budget, we bought a new generator for it, and it's just not going to hold up much longer, but it will hold up as long as we need it to hold up. So we'll keep putting money into it.
Did we buy that new? Was it
Yeah.
bought new?
It was
back
bought
in
new in
86?
bought new in '87. It's got an '86 chassis.
Yeah.
Bought new in '87. It came with the '80s furniture in it.
Yeah, I remember Hal Brady. That knew, being
Right.
his son were good friends. I remember being on that when I was like 13 or 14.
How many total vehicles do you use out there?
We have 2 frontline units. We have 1 Tahoe that's used for volunteers, and then we have the command post. When we have severe weather, sometimes we run into a real problem. Most recent snowstorm that we had to split calls, and it's difficult when you have to do that when you have a small staff.
So, just to make this clear before we finish, is there any capital that you're asking for in this budget?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
And then next. Finale?
Mayor, we want to go over planning and zoning while we're here as a group, or just wait? That's something we haven't looked at tonight.
Or animal show.
I don't know.
I think with respect to them, we probably should wait till they're able to show up.
Well, it's up to you guys. I don't care. I mean, I'm just wondering.
Let's just get on with seeing George.
Okay.
And then we'll figure it out.
You got it.
Good evening. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, Council.
Well, I'll get started. One thing I've talked about in the past, I think we've said the amount of billable runs, and this is just from what Dave has mentioned in the past, versus the total runs of EMS. That's billable are the runs, to define them, are the runs where someone is actually taken to a healthcare facility. Is that right?
That is.
Whether it's a doctor's office,
yeah.
hospital, and the like, okay?
Yes.
Those are about 70% of your total runs, is that correct?
Probably about 75% of our runs.
75%. We'll go with 70. In the past, on your total budget, like this year, last year it was, you had a total budget of $3.3 million. 3.3 million in terms of expenditures. And your estimated collections were about $1,355,000, and that's about. So in other words, you're collecting about 40% of your total budget. And I think last year I said that we would like to see. We're not ever expecting this to break even or make money, obviously.
Correct.
Because we're always going to have an ambulance service that stands at the ready. And that means that you might go out on runs, and you may think it's an emergency, and it turns out not to be, but it's good to go ahead and go out for a sense of security. But I think
I think what I was thinking of, and maybe I don't know how many others on council, is if you have 70% of the runs are billable, then rather than that number being 40%, rather than just receiving 40%, we should be more around 70%. That is, every run that's billable, we should be able to collect an amount equal to, on average, the cost of that run.
Well, that's not necessarily true, Mark. And some of that is because of what we're required to accept from certain insurances, such as Medicare and Medicaid. And, you know, of course, there's disallowed charges. That means there's contracts which is set up by the government that says we'll pay X number of dollars for an ambulance transport. The rest is disallowed. That means by law we cannot go to recoup those additional charges. Okay? So, for example, if we had a $1,000 ambulance bill, okay, and currently, and I'm just giving you current fee schedules, and this is from Medicare. So if we transported somebody and they had a $1,000 ambulance bill for an ALS emergency, that means a paramedic was involved with the care, treated them. The most that we could currently collect from Medicare would be $389. So you can see we're writing
Losing 60%.
right. You're losing quite a bit. And actually, I do have a few figures for you, just to kind of give you an example. Since April, when our billing company, the new billing company, A&B, took over our billing services, just to give you some facts on some of these. Since April 1st, and this would go until December 31st of 2013, for individuals that were covered by Kentucky Medicaid, our billing company billed out almost $239,000. Okay, and with the adjustments that were taken, we were only able to collect a little over $27,000 on that. Medicare, from April 1st until December 31st of last year, they billed out about $945,000. With the adjustments that they took, we were only able to collect just about $300,000. So you can see there is, quite a large amount of money that, once again, has to be, in a sense, we don't write it off, but we cannot collect it. And that's because those are disallowed charges by the federal government. Now, once again, when you look at, other insurances, of course, we deal with VA transports. They're slow payers, so once again, it kind of takes a little while. And once again, they kind of have some of those same contractual agreements that they'll only pay a certain amount of the ambulance transport. Does that kind of answer your question that you had?
I guess, it just, I know this is a government agency, and I know that the notion is, obviously, we're always going to stand at the ready like the fire department and the police department, and there's a cost there, and that's fine. And that's where, 70% of the runs, and we're trying to make 100% of the runs. There's that 30% cost. I guess my question is, hospitals, like a for-profit hospital, like Georgetown Community Hospital, for example,
yes,
faces the same sort of pressures in terms of the billables regarding Medicare patients, Medicaid patients. And I know there are private ambulance services out there as well. How on earth do they do it if we're only collecting, in this budget, we're only collecting about 35 or 34% of what we're spending? How on earth do those entities do it? I guess that's the biggest question I have is, if we can't even get close to 70%, how on earth does anybody else, actually get to 100%?
And it would not be proper for me to speak on how a private ambulance service operates their business.
That's fine. That's fine.
But I could probably say one of the main differences is they sign contracts with facilities, and one of the things is a lot of times they're constantly loaded with a patient So, you know, as soon as they, you know, transport a patient, there's usually another patient to be picked up at another facility. So that ambulance, in a sense, is pretty much always on the go. From, you know, there's the little bit of downtime, you know, for paperwork, but that's in a sense, you know, one of the advantages. But for me to speak exactly how they operate, I
That
really,
is a rhetorical question, mainly. Thanks.
really couldn't answer appropriately.
Could you, we were discussing this other night about the $500,000 in medical supply and equipment on, we understand it's went up tremendously.
That is correct. Okay.
So it's hard to believe compared to last year.
Sure. And what that is a capital expense. Normally in that line item in the years past, we have had, I think, roughly about $100,000 in that line item. It was being increased a little bit this year for additional cost in medical supplies. Medications have dramatically increased over the last year. So part of that was Dave has risen that from 100,000 to I think roughly 110,000. That would be for medical supplies, medications, the bandages, things of that nature that are used on a daily on all of our calls. The rest of that amount, or another large portion of the amount, the biggest part of it, would be for capital investment, and that would be for our cardiac monitors.
Okay.
That's this piece of equipment right here. Most of our cardiac monitors that we currently have on our trucks are between 11 and 15 years of age. Just like any other computer, and that's basically what they are as a computer, they have lived past their life expectancy. The current company that we contract with or purchase these through is Physio Control, and you know, they state that on average you could expect a cardiac monitor to last anywhere from 5 to 8 years. And of course we have some that are up to 15 years old. So we have really made our equipment last, or to the best of our ability. Some of that is through, we have a routine maintenance program that come in a couple times a year, work on our monitors, make sure they're up to par, and that's really helped. The gentleman who does our service contract definitely, in fact, a couple months ago he was in working on a cardiac monitor that we were needing just some routine maintenance on, and he said it's very obvious that as far as your equipment, you've taken very good care of it, because he says I don't see monitors that are manufactured in 1999 still out on the market. It's not necessarily a want. It is to the point that it is a need. And not to speak for other agencies, but I have a feeling when you get another budget from a city department, it's not to be because they don't use this type of monitor, but they're running into the same issue. The companies have basically said we're no longer going to service those, and without a service contract, there's really no way that we can use these out on the market. And that's kind of an issue that like I said, I know another city department's facing. How many that they will have to replace, I do not know. But that's kind of to the point where we're at, is we have been told that by the end or at the beginning of next year, these monitors will no longer be able to be serviced, and without them being able to service them, we, if something happens, as far as if we have an issue with it, they won't come and fix it, and there we are, we're left with a piece of
So
equipment.
is that replacing all of them?
That is replacing all of them.
So how many does that versus?
I think what Dave has in here, I think it's 11, I believe.
Okay.
I think.
And that replaces all of them that you have?
That would replace the ones on our trucks, yes.
Did this not come about last year, to think about maybe doing part of them last year and then part of them this year instead of doing the whole amount at one time?
Well, Karen, a couple things to address that is, number one, we knew that there was a date coming soon as far as when they were going to quit working on the cardiac monitors. However, they've never put that in writing. And, You know, we heard that actually 3 or 4 years ago that they were going to stop. And in that time, we have been working to obtain grants. Dave, for the last 3 or 4 years, have applied for the AFG grant, same style grant that the English Fire Department applies for, hoping that at least a significant number of the cardiac monitors could be purchased with grant money. Unfortunately, we have not been unsuccessful obtaining any grant money to fund these with. We received the information, it was, I think, around springtime last year. I believe we were already in the budget process that the serviceability on these cardiac monitors would be coming up. They said roughly around 2015. And then just recently, the gentleman who performs the service said that he has been told that the service will end shortly into the first quarter of 2015. We have not received a specific date yet, but that him being the service representative has stated he's already been told by the manufacturer that this will be the general date that they're going to stop within the first quarter.
So you could almost, if you had to, push it into part of it still into this year's budget and part of it into next year's budget. That's in the first quarter. You could almost do that.
My only concern with doing that would be the simple fact that because of the cost of these cardiac monitors, it would have to go out for a bid process. And there are several different manufacturers that produce different cardiac monitors. And each company, the monitor is set up differently. We want our crews to have, when they're utilizing, especially something of this nature on our trucks, to have whatever company bids the best. It doesn't really
Uniformity.
matter, but we want them to have like products to use. So if they're switching from one vehicle to another, they're not jumping in and trying to do something and realizing this is a different style of monitor. Some cardiac monitors have different shock levels as far as if somebody's in cardiac arrest. Some have different energy settings, so that could become a real issue if they put in the wrong energy setting. This way they know exactly what the energy settings are for any monitor that they would pick up in our fleet. So that is a major concern because, once again, like I said, if one company bid and then another company, even if we went to next year and bid something a little different,
Well, you might even be able to work it into why you're the bidding process, but that's some of the instructions in the bidding process as to how it would be financed out or paid out or something like that you could go ahead and get it and have a company that will work with you on dividing up the payment kind of thing on it, that you can separate it into two. I'm sure you're talking about $500,000. I'm sure that they could probably do that.
I would say that is a possibility to work something like that out.
Now, you have a grant out right now.
That is correct, yes.
When will you know back on that one?
Brad, I wish I could give you the answer. Dave usually handles those grants, and I think they normally begin awarding those, I think, May, but I could not say for 100%.
How much is that for?
It would be for the full, I think, full amount. I think that's what he asked for.
So there's a chance we may not have to invest at all.
Yeah, if we were fortunate, like I said, I know that Dave has applied the last 3 to 4 years, and unfortunately we have never made it. And last year we made it a little bit further in the process than what we had the years before. But
Now, you said the average lifespan on these things is 5 to 8 years, and ours are.
And some of these, most of them are between 11 and 15 years of age.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I
this
guess
is one kind of a. I guess I apologize.
No,
This is kind of a purchase that will never. Well, I shouldn't never, but will be a long period of time before another purchase like this would have to be made.
So are you saying the replacements would have more than a 5 to 8 year lifespan?
No, I'm not saying that. It's what I'm saying is once again you can look at that. If we have as good a success as we've had with these and we maintain them, hopefully we'll be able to extend the life well beyond that. I can't make any guarantees.
Yeah, I guess I don't think anyone's going to argue the fact that we that we've got to have them. I guess the issue that I have is if they have a 5 to 8 year lifespan, we've known for at least 5 years that we need to start replacing them. And I guess I'm curious as to why we didn't start in on a rotation, because what's going to happen is 5 to 8 to 10 years from today, these things may be up to $750,000. Then we're going to be faced with that initial expenditure again. So I'm wondering why we didn't start phasing these in when we're in a much better financial position than we are right now.
Well, Brad, some of that, once again, goes back to the bidding process, because even for one, it's well above what the county requires. I mean, they're above $20,000 a piece.
Sure.
So even if you did it a year-to-year contract or a bidding process, once again, there's many manufacturers out there, or I say many, but at least 4 or 5 different manufacturers of the cardiac monitor that, if you bid it individually, number one, you're not going to get the best price. Number two, that we could end up with several different pieces of technology on the truck that, once again, could, in an emergent situation, if they're not used to that piece of equipment or don't recognize they have a different piece of equipment on the truck, could result in them, not using it properly.
So when other cities replace those, are they replacing them all in one pop to avoid that issue? Or could we write the specs in such a way where we could eliminate that problem?
As far as that question, as far as how the other cities do that, I cannot answer that question. As far as writing the specs, I would have to look at that, because the fact is that most of them are very, very similar. There's very, very similar. The only real difference is energy settings, and also just some of the capabilities and what they're able to do. With the capabilities, yes, that could be definitely, laid out. But as far as energy settings, I don't know that we could specifically write that we want a cardiac monitor that defibrillates at this energy level, because that's all manufacturer.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go on.
It's hard for me to believe that other cities out there who would be faced with the same problems that you're talking about will all replace them all at one time, because it's such a, that's a huge hit.
You're absolutely right.
Follow up what you were saying. I think your comment was that the maintenance and service, getting those fixed is going away. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, yes.
So he's stuck right now that if he doesn't and it breaks down, he has none. Yeah. So I guess replace them at once, because once you can't get them repaired.
Right, that is correct. Trash. Once the serviceability contract runs out on these,
you're on your
even
own.
If they cannot come in and fix
right.
it. Yeah, they cannot touch it. And one of the big issues that we run with that is, number one, we don't have the piece of equipment.
Working fine.
But then once again, it becomes a medical liability.
I think you do this a favor. I think maintain them the way you maintain them, getting the extra life out of it. We could be replacing them.
10 years?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I commend you. I commend what you've done, and I understand what you're saying totally. So.
Do they do trade-ins? I'm just asking.
Well, actually,
oh, wait a minute.
Connie,
wait a minute.
Connie, you bring up actually a good point. If we do move forward with this, and or I should say we, the council
right.
and the county move forward with this, right now, because there is a little bit of life left in these, that there is some trade-in value. It's not much, but basically what they're using them for is the parts for other agencies that may be faced with the same thing, that may clear up to the point in which the service contracts will end. If there's something that goes wrong, they will replace the parts. That is one of the issues that we had a cardiac monitor. Basically, like I said, it's a computer. 2 months ago that they had to come in and replace the motherboard in. Fortunately, it was covered under the service contract. If we didn't have that service contract, it would have been about $10,000 to put the motherboard in.
But so does that mean we could scavenge if we needed to? If we had other ones break down and they're out of the service contract, can we borrow from this one to fix this one, or?
No, if it's out of the service contract, that means the service individual can't. What they're doing is up to that point. So if somebody had it, up until December of next year, and they had one of these, and the cardiac monitor broke down, and they could still come out and work on them. They could, yeah, because that's why they're kind of saying we're no longer going to service them. They've quit manufacturing the parts for this particular this particular monitor.
Do you think that we will know the results of that grant application before we finalize our budget?
I would really hope that we would, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I know that, I think they issue grants clear into the fall. So, and I think that's when we finally got our last report that we didn't make the final cut, was roughly around October.
But if we decide to go ahead and do with this and that grant comes through, we can reimburse the city and county back on that money.
That's what I would hopefully that in which we could do.
I've got two questions.
Yep.
That pertain to billing.
Okay.
First question is, going back and using your example on the run that costs $1,000
Yes.
on that Medicare patient, will we get the reimbursement back for $380-something?
Yes. Yes.
Do we try to go out and recoup the remainder of that?
We
Or
can't,
do we?
by law, we can't. What Medicare has stated
Okay.
is, just like on that example there, is, and that's kind of a little bit how we set our fees as Medicare, in a sense. This is the way most ambulance services sets their fees, is based off what Medicare reimbursement is. And that's always fluctuating. And currently for this quarter of 2014, I apologize, give me just one moment here. The reimbursement rate for, like I said, an ALS run, and that'd be one in which we responded emergency. So an example, it's a chest pain call, and a paramedic went out and took care of the patient. The current reimbursement rate for that type of call would be $389. So, but not every call that we transport on Medicare. For an example, if we transported a patient from a nursing facility to a doctor's office, or let's say to a dialysis clinic, we would only receive $204 right now on that.
Is there a, are you done, Mark?
A couple.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Flip that around then and say it's not a Medicare patient, but it's a patient that has health insurance.
Yes.
And their insurance only pays $389
Right.
out of $1,000. Do we then try to go after the
Yes,
remainder of that money?
yes, we can recoup for that, yes. And currently, kind of, I know the request came when we were looking at billing companies several years ago, or a couple years ago. Part of that was to go about collecting additional revenues from individuals who don't pay their bills, and we have signed a contract already with a collections company. And, hopefully we'll see what kind of results we receive from that. That contract was signed in November, and they've been working those. I don't think we've received a lot of revenue from that, but some of that is we can kind of tell from who the individuals that were sent. On some of those, we know we probably may not see anything or a very small amount. And then like on our private pays, we do have some individuals that are very willing to pay their bill, but because of fixed incomes, they may have a $1,000 ambulance bill, but they say, hey, the most I can give you is $10 a month. And we accept that. It may take them, a couple years to pay that, but as long as we're receiving some additional revenue, or as long as they continue to pay on their bill, then that's what we'll accept, and we'll work with them on that.
All right, my last question is, if you make an ambulance run, and whether or not a service is or is not performed,
yes,
and there's no transporting of that patient, do we not bill that patient for a service run?
No, we do not bill. If we respond out, and I'll give you an example, because a lot of times we'll get called, say, to a motor vehicle accident. And many times we'll show up and it's a bystander that's actually called for those individuals. And we'll show up and they'll say, no, we're fine, we don't need an ambulance, so we go back available. But that individual is not billed for those services because, once again, they didn't request. If we respond to somebody's residence, once again, we don't bill to go out there and evaluate. Now, we do send a bill on certain calls if we go in and perform certain procedures. And those procedures, diabetic calls are our primary individuals because of the cost of the medications and the materials in which we would use to correct a low blood sugar. Then those individuals will be sent a bill. And those type of services, once again, they cannot turn over to their insurance company, but they'll be sent a bill to help recoup the cost of the materials that were used on that call.
Is the cost of rendering these runs, is that matched by the price? How do we set the price? Is it matched?
May I ask just which calls you're?
Well, like for instance, a chest pain call that someone is actually transported to a hospital.
Right.
I mean, the cost of that sort of call, is that matched by the actual price we're charging?
Tell me.
The cost of
Yeah.
staff time, the cost
Staff.
of the gas, the cost of the wear and tear on the ambulance, all those costs.
I think I know what
Yeah.
you're saying. No, I mean, because certain medications cost more than others.
Mhm.
We compare our rates with other services around, and like I said, there's a certain rate in which we're allowed to charge, and I apologize. Dave handles most of that information as far as the rate structure. That's kind of his area. So I can't give you a clear answer on that. But like I said earlier, Medicare kind of dictates the cost. I do know that with last year's fee structure, as far as what we charged for transports, we were right in the same area as what Lexington and Frankfurt and Woodford County charges to transport patients. So,
Do they have the same sort of rates as far as the money they get back? I mean, are they around that same 35 to 40% figure in terms of recouping the cost of the service?
Mark, that information I do not know.
I think we looked at that during the interlocal committee meetings, and we were somewhere in the neighborhood of about $55 less on a rate run in terms of collecting than the surrounding counties. Remember we talked about that in the past, that there was actually,
I think I remember something.
we could actually get a lot closer to being budget neutral.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And do you know your department is over half of all the interlocals combined, that's the increase?
I would imagine that, yes. With
He's honest.
what we were asking for.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the service you provide.
It's the best out there.
Hold you up against anybody.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it very much. Any other questions?
I just don't want to have to call you.
Sorry?
I just don't want to have to call you.
I can completely understand that.
I think Judge going to talk. Judge?
No.
He's been here all night, the judge, so.
It's gonna be first, I guess.
What's the department?
I could answer your animal control questions, but one thing Jerry was talking about on the Parks and Rec, and someone asked the question, did they pay rent? They don't pay any rent to the county. And we set up an agreement with the school system about 3 or 4 years ago to charge the school $10,000 for the use of the baseball fields. That money goes directly to the Parks Department, doesn't go to the county. The county pays the water, the lights, the maintenance of the field, and of course, the baseball team does a lot of maintenance. They rent the blue building, the concession building, to Checkpoint. We pay Checkpoint $10,000. They pay rent to Parks and Rec for that building. They rent the blue building out almost every week during the summer for reunions and things. The county doesn't get any money out of that. We pay the utilities and everything. Parks and Rec gets that. They rent for the tractor pulls, they rent that out. Parks and Rec does. They get the revenue for that. All of the rent that is generated at the park out there goes directly to Parks and Rec. So those are things that sometimes there's expenses that the council doesn't even see that the county pays. Oftentimes when it snows, not every time, we go out and push the snow at the pavilion. We furnish the salt for the pavilion. We do those things and gladly do them. So when we're talking about well, I heard Jeb say that occasionally his man goes out and works on a sheriff's vehicle radio. Well, does the county pay part of that? And I asked Jeb just before he left, and he said that's so minuscule, if I can say that word, it's about 1%. And if you want to bill us for that, that's fine. But I want you to know that there are lots of things that we pay for that you don't even know. And I know this is boring to some of you because you've heard it before, but it needs to be repeated. And right now, the Georgetown Scott County Museum, we're going to spend this year, we're going to either have to shut it down or fix the heating and air, the electricity, $250,000. And that will not be billed to the city, any part of it. Next year after that, we got to put a new roof on it. And it has to be done. The same thing with the building across the street, the library building. That we spent, I forget, up into $20,000 this year fixing the roof. Now, we got a joint grant that the mayor and I got for about $14,000 that helped pay for that, but we paid the balance on that. So you need to know these things when you talk about, well, we need to build the county. The code enforcer does he's gone probably 5 or 10% of his work in the county. Doesn't have to do any. We do use him occasionally because we are paying half of his cost, and in the budget that's $90,000. And gladly pay it. He's not part of building inspection, he's part of the police department. So I say all these things to say, if we're not doing our fair share, let me know. We had this about 2 weeks ago, they had a big Met lab cleanup. Cost a little over $8,000. That's under Jack Donovan's department. Said, I was asked by Secretary, do you want to put this under Jack's department? And I said, no, the county will pay for all of it. Those are things that and the best thing that Scott County and Georgetown have is working together through these interlocals. And if we don't pay our fair share, then I want to know why, because we more than do this. And these are just a few of the things that we continue to do. And then, you sit here and listen, well, what about, like I say, with Dusty? And we're glad to pay that half of that. That's $40-some thousand just in one thing. And take the rent that the county ought to be generating at the park. Instead of the county taking that in revenue, we take it. And what Brandon was talking about, this equipment, we've pushed it down as far as we can push it to get this. And I can tell you another thing that we need, and Brandon didn't mention it, we have 3 people out at the ambulance on workers' comp, been out for a year, and it's from lifting. There's equipment now that they can put the heavy patients on. It's automatic, it saves their backs. We've got 1 unit. They cost about $15,000 each. One of our magistrates, rightfully so, said we need those on all of our ambulances, and we do. Maybe we save workers' comp, and I know by doing the things that you have done with the garbage pickup, by putting the Herbie Kirby's in, how much you have saved on these type of things. It's not in the budget. It should be in the budget. And these are things, and what I would like to do, and I've told the mayor that and Stacy, is to sit down in a small group and negotiate and talk and work together to get all of these things worked out where we can be comfortable. Everybody thinks that they're treated fairly, and I think we're more than treating fairly. Not trying to make a big speech or bore anybody, but this is exactly what's going on. And we're doing it day after day after day. And glad to do it. We're blessed. We've got a good reserve. I know that y'all are tighter than we are. And we're glad to do these things. And we don't bill you for a lot of stuff that technically we could and don't want to. So I say all that, and with that said, I did want to tell Jerry, she didn't misspoke, she misunderstood about the rent. And with that, I'll talk about the animal shelter if you've got questions on that.
Anybody have any questions on the animal shelter?
No questions of the judge at this time about the animal shelter?
Hang on just a second, she asked me.
There's one thing on there, Connie.
That 2014-15 budget right there, hang on.
There's a vehicle on there. That's the one that we were gonna, put in a surplus. It's the one he wrecked. So it's gonna have, I think it's totaled, but,
Will you get any insurance out of that, Judge? Probably
it's
a little-
insured, yeah,
little bit.
but the value of it, Marvin, is minimal. We're down 2 employees right now. We're down to 7 employees. We've been down to 8. I think I told Stacy that we were down to 8 on the thing. We need 9, but then the one employee that's right now not working. So we're down 2 employees and currently. And all of these things, if we can sit down with people that want to work together, we can work these things out, I think, to everybody's agreement, but it's pretty hard the way I see it now. And this way we've done it in the past. But, and that's what, when we talked before, that I understood we were going to do. In fact, the mayor asked me to come before the council, and I said, no, let's sit down and with Stacy and myself and the mayor and whoever they wanted and work out these. But they are the lifeblood of Georgetown and Scott County. And regardless of how much we talk about cost, they are working good. Every interlocal agreement we've got is working good, and some that aren't interlocal agreements. I've never seen the sheriff's department and the police department work better together than they're working now. The fire department, you have a fire, you don't know who's putting the fire out and who's not. They're all working together. We've got 100 firefighters in Scott County when you put the city and the county together. And we are truly blessed. And we can argue or talk whatever about money, but we cannot get away from the fact that all of these interlocal agreements are something we're the envy of around the state. And I work with any group or anyone on these budgets. But I'm the finance director across the street, and I put the budget together, and glad to, and with the mayor and Stacy or anybody else that you want to. And one of the reasons that we hold things down, I understand how tight y'all's budget is compared to ours. And when you turn a budget into the county on any interlocal agreement, we've never cut it a penny, never. And hopefully we never have to. And so I assume, and I hope you assume this from me, that you know what you need, and I don't. I don't know about running the dispatch. I don't know about running the building inspection, and not supposed to. And when Brad said that Don works for you all, Don is an employee of the county, and you contract through the interlocal agreement to work for us. And Jack Donovan, you heard him speak about a 1986 vehicle. Yeah, he's asked for a new vehicle every year for the past 10 years, but we try to cut the cost down. Where'd Jack go? Right, Jack? So I said, just don't ask this year. It's not going to happen. And he's asked for more employees.
Thanks.
And some people accuse me of being conservative, and maybe I am, but that is where I stand and where I think the fiscal court stands, and we did have several here. Now we've lost some of the numbers, but anyway, I don't mean to bore you, but I do think it's important that be said. And we do take in consideration the fact that your budget is tighter than ours. And these things that we need for the ambulance service, we need them. We need them 3 or 4 years ago. things were a lot tighter. We told all of our departments in 2008, outside of salaries, you take 10% out of the rest of your budget, the next year 10%, and the next year 5%. That's 25%. So there wasn't money there to do that. We used part-time people to fill in for the ambulance. And I think, Mark, you asked the question why those other independent ambulances can operate. One of the big things is all emergency people have to pay 35% retirement. You know, if you're a private company, they don't have to pay anything if they don't want to for retirement. That's a big cost. And salaries and benefits. I figured the way our budget is, it may not work out this way, but it's going to be close. The cost of the benefit package for the ambulance, the last time I checked the numbers, Stacy, was 91% of the salary. Now think about that. 35% for retirement, 15% for workers' comp because you have so much. You add your health insurance and your other benefits, and if it's not 90%, it's awful close to it. So that's one of the reasons that private companies can operate cheaper. And another thing, they probably don't have the coverage that we have.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, we've got 4 ambulances and sometimes 5 or 6, Brandon. So that's, we are so blessed. And I'll close with this one statement, and you know what that is. Scott County and Georgetown is the best place in the world to live, and it's because of working together. Thank you.
Judge, can I ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
on animal control? On the salaries you've got down, I was actually sitting here adding up last year's budget and didn't realize I wasn't looking at this year's budget, but you've got on the salary line item, you've got an increase on the director's salary, which I assume all the employees, but you don't have an increase on anybody else's employees are you giving increases to the employees?
We're giving $1,040 across the board.
That's all, everybody.
And we've had so many people, I think Brad, before he left, said, you know, you're not figuring loss. We have a big turnover in animal control.
Okay, so that's why you kept it the
And
same.
the money that's in there will cover what we've got. But the people that are there will get $1,040.
Okay, so you'll fluctuate it because people come in and people
Well,
go
in fact of the matter, they're going to get a little more than that. Not the director, but the others. They start out at $9.75 an hour. That's less than $20,000 a year, and that's one of the toughest jobs in the county. We're going to raise the starting salary and then give them the $1,040.
Your director's got $3,000. Does that also include the benefits in that line item that we've got? It's a $3,000 increase.
In the director?
Animal control director, so is that the benefits in there too?
No. If it's 3,000 more for salary, that's a mistake. It's
It looks like, I've got the last year and it looks like that says 45 and that says 48.
It's $1,040. We gave $1,040 last year, of the current year we're in. And we're giving $1,040 this year.
Okay, all right, one other question. What it says payment to government agency, it looks like it says $6,000. What's that?
That's money we collect in and that comes to you.
So that's all we get as far as the collection from
Yeah.
animal control? Okay. All right.
And another thing, Brad's gone, but I wanted to point out when he was talking about the $60,000 for electrical inspection, one of the things I do in budget, and I always budget revenues low and expenses high and hope that the expenses are low and they work the reverse. We can put $100,000 in there for that, but if you don't get it, you're going to say, well, you promised us that. So if we put 60 and you get 80, then you're that much better off. Now, we try to be accurate, and he said something today that he had mentioned to me before that I didn't know, that we're going to start doing the electrical inspections for Toyota. Well, that wasn't anticipated, so that I don't know how much that'll mean, but all of that is good news. So we're in good shape, but I want to keep it that way. Mark, you look like you're about to say something.
Oh, I was about to, yeah, as a matter of fact. On the truck for animal control, is it like an F-150? Is it somewhere on that par, or one of the Rangers?
Yeah, I don't know, Mark.
Don't know.
I don't know.
It's on the low grade.
It's on the lower grade.
It's it's not a big truck, it's not one of those big heavy trucks.
Yeah.
Did the truck
Pretty
vehicle get destroyed and what took place the other day?
That's the one, the good one. I mean, good that's the one that wrecked.
Okay, so do we need, how much insurance will pay for?
Well, we've got $1,000 deductible, and it was ready to be salvaged this year, so whatever the adjuster says. I don't, I have no
I
idea.
just wondered if that would bring the price down of what you need the new vehicle since.
Well, what you would do when we buy a new vehicle, I'd take the deductible out, and you would get half of the revenue that we get from that. If it brings $4,000, then you'd get $1,500, because it would take the $1,000 off of the deductible, and we'd get $3,000, and you'd be entitled to
Do
half
we
of
pay
that.
half of the insurance on the deductible though?
Who, what?
Do we pay half the insurance on the, what, do we
Yeah,
cover
we
the
can pay
insurance?
half of the insurance, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, they wouldn't give us $4,000, they'd only give us $3,000.
okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I'm rattled enough. If you got any more questions?
My only question is not specifically about the budget, but because we've discussed a variety of animals over the last year or so, whether and whether those ordinances that we do have in place have any teeth and how that relates to animal control. Should we continue with that? Should we have ordinances within the city with the expectation or not with the expectation that animal control handles those? I think that's something that came up before, that maybe this is not the time or place for that. But does that make sense to council, what I'm asking about?
I know what
we,
you're talking
we have
about.
those,
Yeah,
but animal control doesn't have to, or isn't bound to, or licensed to, or whatever, to handle those on behalf of the city.
What you're talking about, when there was talk in the interlocal committee meetings about the city not supporting the animal control, the county does not have to, or not obligated to enforce city ordinances unless by an interlocal agreement.
Okay.
And that's what you're talking about. And we get all kinds of questions. I got one the other day about what we're going to do about these buzzards. So,
Well, our police officers, that was my one accomplishment on my first term in council. I think we got a resolution passed where our police officers can shoot those buzzards with shotguns.
A certain number.
A certain number, yeah. We got some sort of certificate from the federal government allowing us to shoot a certain amount of buzzards. Yeah.
Well,
if you'll recall,
that was my one.
The Japanese kites that were flown also.
be careful what you do. We got a lawsuit for $200,000 for somebody shooting a couple of sheep or dogs or something.
Well, I don't think we're going to get that mixed up with buzzards.
Any other questions?
We're going to get the buzzards in the air.
Thank you.
Must be flying.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
That was 07 or 08. We've got that around here somewhere.
Go home.
No, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
I did it.
Everybody's in favor except for Mark Showalter. He wants to stay longer.
The ethics committee? No.
Yes.
They'll have to call my cell phone bill and get a hold of me. Or send me a certified letter. I haven't heard of that. But I'll be glad to.
Hey, Bill.
Meet with them. Accommodate their time.
Yes.